Chapter 1082. Double Happiness Husband, should we let Wu Di try it on the spirit steel? Wu Di was simply too dazzling. Even though the Li family elders had told her to stop targeting him, she couldn't help but speak up. She'd prepared that immortal condensing pill for her son, but now this little bastard had stolen it from her. How could she possibly endure this? No need. Wu Wenguang rarely spoke directly to Li Na. He snorted. Wu Di is now our Wu family's Qilin son. Li Na, I know you don't think very highly of him, but you'd best not make trouble for him in the future. Otherwise, I won't let your Li family off the hook. Wu Wenguang's aura as a family head was instantly revealed. Li Na looked at Wu Wenguang, who radiated a sharp aura, and found him somewhat unfamiliar. In the past, she'd always been the one in charge of the family. Wu Wenguang hadn't dared say no to her, but now he was warning her in such a domineering manner? Wu Wenguang! Li Na gnashed her teeth and shouted angrily. However, her words, which had never failed her in the past, had no effect on Wu Wenguang today. Be a good boy and keep that smile on your face. Otherwise, forget about you. I'll even uproot your entire family. Don't think I don't know how many resources your Li family secretly swallowed from my Wu family. After today, I, Wu Wenguang, will make your Li family spit it all back up. After coldly snorting at Li Na, Wu Wenguang withdrew the sinister look on his face and smiled at Kai Tong. Senior Wu Di is our family's Qilin son. I hope you can show mercy and spare his life. I can promise you that in the future, he and Yunnan will have nothing to do with each other. A Qilin son was a symbol of a family's rise to power. This sort of talent couldn't be abandoned on a whim. Even if the Kai family was powerful, he had to protect Wu Di. Kai Tong was keenly aware of how important a Qilin son was to his family. Furthermore, Wu Di's strength was unfathomable. Since he's the Wenguang family's Qilin son, I naturally won't say anything more. But remember, I don't want to see anything I don't want to see happen. Of course, of course. After smiling obsequiously for a while, Wu Wenguang straightened his lapels. As the crowd congratulated him, he proudly strode up to Wu Di. However, when he saw Yi Zichen, his heart skipped a beat. This was someone who dared to mock and ridicule even Kai Tong, and would start a fight at the slightest disagreement. Senior, you're Wu Di's master, right? You don't need to worry about me. Just do what you need to do. I'll go sit in your seat for a while, okay? No problem, please have a seat. How could Wu Wenguang dare to say no? Even if he wanted to be the Wu family patriarch for a few days, Wu Wenguang wouldn't dare to say anything. Yi Zichen smiled, then walked over to Wu Wenguang. However, just as he was about to arrive, he glanced at Kai Renfei and Kai Tong with a faint smile. After that, he didn't say anything and directly sat down on Wu Wenguang's seat. Why is he here? Kai Renfei knit his brows. He and Yi Zichen were at odds. However, when they met just now, he didn't seem to have any intention of greeting her. Since that was the case, it was best to ignore him. The matter of revenge was not urgent. Yi Zichen had attacked the Kai family, and even injured his grandfather, Kai Tong. Even so, Kai Tong maintained his silence. Clearly, he didn't want to stir up trouble. Wu Wenguang respectfully saw Yi Zichen off, then looked at Wu Di with a complicated expression. He wanted to pat his son, who'd never been by his side since birth, on the shoulder, but Wu Di instinctively dodged. It seems you really hate me. Wu Wenguang smiled wryly at Wu Di, then sighed inwardly. He didn't explain himself. Instead, he put on a smile and called out to the spectators. In this year's Wu family competition, Wu Di takes first place. As soon as he finished speaking, someone walked out from the side, holding a tray covered with a red cloth. The prize for this year's competition is an immortal condensing pill. I will now personally hand it to Wu Di. When the red cloth was lifted, a jade bottle was placed on it. When the onlookers heard that this was an immortal condensing pill, they were visibly moved. The Wu family was truly generous. Lil Di, take it. You deserve it. He shoved the jade bottle into Wu Di's hands. Wu Chang gnashed his teeth so hard that they creaked. This pill was clearly supposed to be his. This was the first time Wu Di had felt the warmth of his father's palm. He inexplicably felt a lump in his throat, but when he thought about his mother's death, he forced himself to endure it. He clenched the pill in his hand, then pulled his hand away from Wu Wenguang's. When he sensed his father's distance from him, Wu Wenguang couldn't help but sigh inwardly. However, he could understand. He'd let his mother and son down too much in the past. Once the pill was handed over, the spectating aristocratic families began to offer their congratulations. Thank you for your congratulations, everyone. The Wu family's new Qilin son is truly a joyous occasion for our family. Perhaps today truly is an auspicious day for our Wu family. It's a double blessing. Double blessing. Both the spectating aristocratic families and the Wu family's younger generation revealed strange expressions. One of the blessings was obviously Wu Di's Qilin son, while the other was most likely his marriage to the Kai family. They just didn't know who would be the sacrificial lamb in this marriage alliance. Wu Di, on the other hand, clenched the pill bottle in confusion. Perhaps only he and Yi Zichen didn't know about the Kai family and Wu family becoming in-laws. In 3 months, my clan's Jing Yunan will marry into the Kai family. From then on, the Wu and Kai families will be on good terms. As soon as he finished speaking, a graceful figure appeared before everyone's eyes. Jing Yunan wore a long, faint red dress. Accompanied by Jing Qinggong, she walked up to Kai Tong and Kai Renfei. Jing Yunan? So it's her. Everyone in Raging Flame City had heard a thing or two about Jing Yunan. Of course, they'd only heard about her because of Jing Qinggong. But if the Wu family and Kai family were getting married, how could it be her? The Wu family's younger generation was stunned as well. None of them would have guessed that Jing Yunan would be the one getting married. Wu Di, who stood by Wu Wenguang's side, was also dumbfounded. He instinctively reached into his robes and glanced at the jade hairpin Jing Yunan had given him. For some reason, he recalled their conversation in the corner of the arena. Why had she appeared here in a long dress? Why did he think she was the one who grabbed him and asked him such a question? Why had she returned that jade hairpin, something she'd always treasured so much to him? When Jing Yunan appeared in her red dress, when he saw her walk up to Kai Renfei and stare blankly ahead with a formal smile, he understood now. Chapter 1083. The two most important things for a man Jing Yunan and Kai Renfei's marriage was finally set in stone. With the Kai family and Wu Di as their Qilin son, the other clans of Raging Flame City looked at the Wu family with some trepidation. After becoming a Qilin son, the Wu family arranged a new residence for Wu Di, and the clan elders were full of praise for him. Congratulatory gifts almost filled up the courtyard allocated to him. His mother's memorial tablet was personally brought to the ancestral hall by the elder who was in charge of the clan's genealogy records, and her name was left in the genealogy records. It could be said that Wu Di had obtained everything he'd ever wanted, but he couldn't bring himself to smile. Night fell. The Wu family was still bustling with activity. The clansmen were all celebrating the family's rise to prominence. However, amidst the bustle of the night, 2 people sat silently in their rooms. One was Jing Yunan, who was about to marry into the Kai family. The other was the Qilin son, Wu Di. The clamor continued without end. Wu Di sat in his courtyard in a daze. Unbeknownst to the Wu clan, he quietly snuck out of the residence. May I ask if Senior Yi lives here? After some thought, Wu Di arrived at the 100 Daybreaks Inn, found a waiter, and asked, "Bring him up." Before the waiter could open his mouth, a deep echo resounded in his mind. The waiter didn't suspect anything. He smiled, gestured for Wu Di to enter, and led him to the 5th floor. The door opened gently, and when Wu Di entered, he saw that Yi Zichen was already seated at the tea table, pouring him a cup of fragrant tea. "Master." Yi Zichen stood in front of the door and cupped his hands in greeting, then smiled and waved back. "Come sit." The tea on the table emanated steam and a faint fragrance. This was a type of tea only found in the Earth Great District. It was called ecstasy. Just as its name suggested, just smelling it refreshed the heart and mind. Once it entered the throat, it made one feel as if they were on cloud nine, forgetting the pain and suffering of the mundane world. When Yi Zichen left the Wu family, the steward of the Skyspan Trading Company had given him this tea. As for why he'd given it to him, he didn't think about it, nor did he have time to. Try it. It's a good tea. Yi Zichen took a sip, then pointed at Wu Di's cup of tea. When he saw Wu Di's dazed expression, Yi Zichen smiled and set his cup down. I almost forgot to congratulate you. Congratulations on becoming the Wu clan's Qilin son. Mother's memorial tablet has been returned to the clan's ancestral hall. Congratulations, my long-cherished wish has been fulfilled. With that, Yi Zichen looked up and observed Wu Di's expression. He forced a smile and held the teacup on the table with his right hand. He wanted to pick it up but put it down halfway. For a long time, he did not say anything. It's late, I'm going to rest. Master. Just as Yi Zichen was about to get some rest, Wu Di suddenly spoke up. However, after saying these two words, his lips kept moving, and his expression seemed to be very conflicted. Just say what you want to say. I'm your master, there's nothing I can't say. Yi Zichen stopped and smiled calmly. Wu Di's hands fidgeted with the tea table, but in the end, he sighed and said respectfully, You're right. Your disciple will take his leave now, master. Yi Zichen looked at Wu Di's bleak figure and stood in place. Do you know why I haven't rested yet, and why I've been waiting for you at the tea table for so long? Your disciple doesn't know, replied Wu Di. Jing Yunan became the sacrificial lamb for the marriage alliance between the Wu and Kai families. It wasn't worth it for me to do that. Wu Di, who'd been bowing and cupping his fists, suddenly shuddered. A jade hairpin slipped from his sleeve and fell to the ground. Just as it was about to hit the ground, Yi Zichen waved his hand, snatched it up, and fiddled with it. You're already married, so what's the point of keeping it? How about I help you destroy it? Wu Di suddenly reached out and tried his best to stop Yi Zichen. No. Har! Yi Zichen chuckled and walked up to Wu Di, then placed the hairpin back in his pocket. Next, Yi Zichen patted Wu Di on the shoulder, then looked out the window, his expression solemn. Do you know what two things a real man needs to hold on to in order to live a worthy life? Wu Di said nothing, so Yi Zichen continued. In one hand, you hold the power of the world. In the other, you hold a woman's hand. Wu Di, who'd been silent for a moment, shuddered. He looked up to say something, but Yi Zichen had already left. If you want it, go ahead and take it. Don't waste your life. Don't worry, your master will always support you. All right, it's getting late. Go back and don't forget to close the door behind you. Wu Di respectfully left the room. The instant he shut the door, he clenched his fists and bowed deeply to Yi Zichen's door. Thank you, master. Yi Zichen stood by the window and couldn't help but shake his head and smile, but then he sighed. He could support Wu Di, but who could support him? The power of the world, the hands of a woman. He hadn't even held on to them. What a nice way to take control of the world's affairs and sleep on a woman's knees. I never would have guessed Brother Yi was such a sentimental person. At that moment, a woman suddenly appeared in Yi Zichen's room, where Gu Li had been sitting. The woman's eyes shone brightly, and her eyebrows arched like willow leaves. Her nose was high and her lips were pink. She looked delicate and pretty, but her clothes were provocative. Only a few strips of white cloth wrapped around her upper body, and she wore skin-tight leather pants. Her reddish-brown hair fell to her shoulders, and a pendant hung from her snow-white neck, which hung neatly in front of her chest. She held a teacup in her fair hands, filled with the fragrant tea Yi Zichen had brewed. And here I thought you wanted to peep on me as I slept. When he saw the woman suddenly appear, Yi Zichen didn't react in the slightest. On the contrary, he acted as if he'd known all along that she was here. The woman didn't reply. Instead, she lifted the teacup to her lips and took a sip. I never would have guessed I'd get a taste of ecstasy here. It really is ecstasy. She licked her lips with her soft pink tongue. Her seductive movements, coupled with her pure face, created a strong visual contrast that could easily ignite any man's passion. Yi Zichen naturally felt the same way. He blinked over to the woman's side, grabbed her delicate chin, and pulled her pretty face closer to his. You and I are alone in a room in the middle of the night, yet you're acting so seductively towards me. Am I allowed to suspect that you're trying to seduce me? Not only did the woman not show any signs of fear, she even intentionally inched her face closer to Yi Zichen's. Their lips were practically touching. You can think of it that way. A faint orchid fragrance emanated from the woman's body, but at that moment, Yi Zichen pushed her back. Chapter 1084. Master, I have a favor to ask. Yi Zichen had sensed this woman following him back at the Wu family estate. At first, he was on guard, but when he saw that she didn't show herself and didn't have any ill intentions towards him, he decided to just ignore her. What he didn't expect, however, was that she'd followed him all the way to the inn. Now, she'd suddenly used seductive techniques to seduce him. Although Yi Zichen was hot-blooded, he had a bottom line. He'd better not touch a woman who'd appeared out of nowhere. You're using the word sh*t on a virtuous lady. Young Master Yi, you've lost your composure. Her coquettish grumble was like the voice of a demon, lingering in his ears. Even though Yi Zichen had been on guard, his heart still wavered. He'd fallen for her. A gentleman loves money in a proper way, but a lowly person loves money for no reason. No, this doesn't seem to have anything to do with money. Yi Zichen stood by the window and spouted nonsense like Xuanzang, in order to divert his attention elsewhere and ignore the incessant demonic voice. Young Master. The coquettish grumble sounded out from behind him once more. It instantly broke through all of Yi Zichen's defenses. His eyes turned bloodshot as he undressed and pounced on the woman. The woman didn't resist at all. Instead, she wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed herself against him, as if trying to fuse the two of them together. Young Master, come on. Her coquettish moans rang out endlessly. Yi Zichen breathed heavily, then reached out to touch the woman's face. Just as his hand was about to land on the woman's face, the pair of eyes that seemed to have been blinded by lust instantly turned piercingly cold. The tender caress turned into a heavy punch that ruthlessly smashed towards the woman's face. When the fist landed, the woman lying under him actually turned into a bubble and dissipated. As his eyes regained their clarity, Yi Zichen put on his clothes, then leaned against the wall and stared at the woman, who was standing nearby with her arms crossed as if she were watching a show. A pretty good illusion technique. Yi Zichen smiled at the woman, then took out a flask of wine and took a few sips. Although he had already broken through the illusion, his mind was still shaken. It was already difficult for him to stabilize his mind with just his mental strength alone. He could only rely on external objects and strong alcohol to completely burn away the charm in his heart. Brother Yi is indeed extraordinary. Since the illusion was broken, the woman looked towards Yi Zichen with a hint of satisfaction. Since Brother Yi can break my illusion, it seems that we can become very good partners. Let me introduce myself, Chi Mei. If an ordinary person heard this woman's name, they would definitely turn pale with fright. Chi Mei was famous even in the 72 districts and beneath the divine mountains. His illusory technique was so powerful that ordinary heaven immortals would not know how to return when they entered his environment, and they would be trapped in the illusion for the rest of their lives. This was not the main reason why she became famous. The reason why she became famous was more than 10 years ago. The head of the Sky Great District's Skyspan Gate took her as his concubine. She used her illusory technique to trap over 300 members of the Skyspan Gate, including several immortal kings and even the head of the Skyspan Gate, in an illusion for over 10 years. Only then did she release them. After that, the head of the skyspan gate went into seclusion. No one knew what he experienced in the illusion, but no one ever heard of him taking Chi Mei as his concubine again. Who was Yi Zichen? He was a newbie who'd only been in the 72 districts for less than 2 months. Chi Mei. I don't know him. Yi Zichen rolled his eyes at the woman, then snorted, his breath reeking of alcohol. You can go wherever you want. What does that have to do with me? You seduced me, took off my pants, then threw me into an illusion. Now you want to work with me? Little girl, I think you've lost your mind. Go back and eat some walnuts to nourish your brain. His words were full of sarcasm, but Chi Mei didn't get angry. Her pure, innocent face revealed a hint of seductiveness, and her soft, delicate body pressed up against Yi Zichen. If you're not satisfied, then I'll use this body to serve you until you're satisfied. That's not impossible. Again, Yi Zichen instinctively clenched his fist. He was just about to swing them, but when he sensed her warmth, he stopped in midair. Adept. Of course I'm adept. My illusions are useless against you, so I can only use my real body to satisfy you. As she spoke, she rubbed herself against Yi Zichen's arm, causing his heart to flutter. Before long, Yi Zichen grinned like an idiot. He reached out to touch Chi Mei's face, but she stopped him halfway. But before that, young master must promise me one thing. Say it, say it. Forget one, even 10,000 would be fine. I'd like you to accompany me to the 5 Elements' Great Emperor's tomb. Get out of my way. Yi Zichen pushed Chi Mei several meters away, then looked at her vigilantly. The 5 Elements' Great Emperor. This woman. She had landscape paintings. Master, could it be that I'm not enough to satisfy you? That's fine. So long as you agree, I have quite a few sisters who can serve you with me. After being pushed away, Chi Mei simply lay on her side in the room. Her graceful curves were like a catalyst, and any man who saw her felt their mouths go dry. However, in Yi Zichen's eyes, such an alluring scene and such tempting conditions were nothing more than a skeleton. Don't bullshit with me. Who the hell are you? What are you doing here? Didn't I tell you already? My name is Chi Mei, and I've come here to ask you a favor, said Chi Mei as she lay on the ground and smiled seductively. All right, then I'll tell you right now. I can't help you with your request. Please find someone else. Yi Zichen waved his hand and pushed her out of the room. This woman's appearance was far too strange. He'd only just obtained the landscape painting, and he'd already been tainted by the 5 Elements' Great Emperor and the God Emperor's karma. He'd only been out of the painting for half a day, yet this woman had come looking for him. That won't do. Suddenly, Chi Mei rose to her feet. Her previous flirtatiousness was instantly swept away. She sat in front of the tea table with an indifferent expression and took out a scroll from her bosom. A landscape painting. When he saw it, Yi Zichen's expression changed drastically. As expected, Chi Mei had a landscape painting. If you recognize this painting, then you're fated with it. Ordinary people only see it as an ordinary landscape painting, but I firmly believe that you've seen the inside of it. Since you've seen the 5 Stars Great Emperor and the Zhou of Chi Mei only got halfway through her sentence when she felt a pair of large hands clamp over her mouth. She struggled to break free, only to hear Yi Zichen frown. Chapter 1085. You have to go even if you don't want to. People always say that boobs have no brains. Yi Zichen didn't believe it before, but now he did. In Yi Zichen's eyes, Chi Mei had turned into an idiot. What had she been doing just now? If he hadn't stopped her, she might have blurted out Zhou Wu's name. Zhou Wu was a god emperor, the leader of the divine world. If he wanted to kill small fries like them, he could probably get rid of them with just a thought. What was this brainless woman doing? Was she really not afraid of death? Sensing Yi Zichen's nervousness, a crafty glint flashed through Chi Mei's bright eyes. If he wanted to open the 5 Elements' Great Emperor's tomb, he needed all 3 paintings. Yi Zichen had already received the 5 Elements' Great Emperor's approval. Even if Chi Mei stole his painting, it wouldn't matter. She'd wanted to persuade Yi Zichen to come with her through reason and emotion. But now, she had thought of a perfect countermeasure. After a long while, when he sensed no change in the sky, Yi Zichen finally relaxed. However, when he thought of this idiotic woman's actions, his heart skipped a beat. Hurry up and scram. Don't ever appear in front of me again. Let me tell you, I haven't decided whether or not to go to the Five Elements Great Emperor's tomb. Even if I go, I definitely won't go now. Also, if you want to die, find a secluded place to die. I haven't lived enough yet. In his panic, Yi Zichen vented all his anger on Chi Mei. What he didn't expect was for Chi Mei to smile at this moment. Her smile seemed to make the world lose its color and make the flowers and grass bow their heads. There was a ghost. There was definitely something wrong with that smile. Just as Yi Zichen's worries surfaced, he heard. The Five Elements Great Emperor is truly benevolent and righteous. Zhou Wu Yi Zichen slapped his hand over Chi Mei's mouth once more. His eyes were bloodshot and his aura skyrocketed. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? I already told you not to say that name, yet you're still saying it. I repeat, you are not to say his name, at least not in my house. If you understand, nod your head. Chi Mei nodded without hesitation. Yi Zichen glanced at her, then hesitated for a moment before letting go. Zhou Wu. As soon as he let go, Chi Mei shouted again. Yi Zichen had long since anticipated this outcome. He covered her mouth once more. Don't shout anymore. Do you think I won't? Whatever you want, whatever you want. Chi Mei pushed Yi Zichen's hand away, puffed up her chest, and glared at him. I'm telling you, you have to go to the Five Elements Great Emperor's tomb, whether you want to or not. If you don't go, then fine. I'll call out that guy's name. Even if I die, he'll definitely see that you have the Five Elements Great Emperor's landscape painting. When that happens, you'll die too. Let's meet at the river Styx. Don't. I'm afraid of you. I'll give you the panorama of mountains and water. You can do whatever you want with the landscape painting, and we'll pretend we've never met before. How about it? He took out the landscape painting from the ring. When the two landscape paintings met, the two landscape paintings actually emitted a faint five-colored light. Chi Mei indifferently glanced at the panorama of mountains and rivers, then indifferently shook her head. No, you have to come with me. Since the panorama of mountains and rivers recognized its owner, she wouldn't be able to use it even if he gave it to her. Only Yi Zichen could open the tomb. What? When he heard Chi Mei's words, Yi Zichen blurted out a few words in English. Was there any such thing? Was there any justice in the world? He'd already offered up the panorama of mountains and rivers, but this woman still wanted him to go with her? He didn't want to go. Aren't you being a bit unreasonable? Yi Zichen's heart was already burning with rage. He slammed the table and pointed at the painting. If you want to take the treasure, I won't stop you. I've already given you the panorama of mountains and rivers. That's the limit of what I can do. But you're still forcing me to go? Miss, everyone has their own ambitions. I don't have any grand ambitions. I just want to live in peace and quiet. I can't be bothered to deal with the Five Elements Great Emperor and the God Emperor's grievances, nor do I want to deal with them. Of course, I also feel sorry for the Five Elements Great Emperor. I really did want to get revenge for him, but getting revenge requires understanding of one's own strength. The God Emperor stands at the very peak of the God realm. I haven't even climbed a single divine mountain, yet you want me to get revenge for the Five Elements Great Emperor? Am I crazy? Take the panorama of mountains and rivers. I'd rather die than go to the Five Elements Great Emperor's tomb. These words absolutely came from the bottom of her heart. Of course, Yi Zichen had played a part in them as well. With such a sincere outpouring of emotion, Chi Mei should let him off the hook. Although he couldn't bear to part with the painting, for the sake of his own life, it was better to give it up. Yi Zichen was already prepared for her to take the painting and leave, but to his surprise, when she heard his sincere outburst, Chi Mei stared at him, her expression deadpan. Then, unexpectedly, she nodded. All right, then let's die together. Zhou. He'd thought he'd be able to move her, but this was the result. Yi Zichen covered Chi Mei's mouth. She was on the verge of tears. He smiled bitterly and said, Grand Aunt, no, Grandma. I've already said so much. I've expressed everything I could. Can't you just let me go? Then tell me, what do you want in exchange for letting me go? Money? I'll send my subordinates to collect it right away. So long as it's not too excessive, I'll satisfy you. You want pills? So long as you give me the recipe, if it's within my capabilities, I'll absolutely refine it for you. What do I have to do to get you to let me go? Tell me. Chi Mei, who'd always been stubborn and unmoved, was visibly moved when she heard Yi Zichen mention refining pills. You're a pill refiner? As soon as she said that, she seemed to be in disbelief. She looked Yi Zichen up and down a few times. She'd met quite a few pill refiners before, and every single one of them was as arrogant as an idiot. Most of them even had mustaches. Yi Zichen didn't look like a pill refiner at all. Yes. This humble one is indeed a pill refiner. Yi Zichen nodded. What grade? I think it's a 9th grade pill. If I were to refine a C condensing pill, my success rate would be around 80%. Yi Zichen said this without much confidence. He had some understanding of the pill refining system here. Only a 9th grade pill refiner could refine a C condensing pill for immortal kings. Although he'd never refined one before, he'd calculated that if he were to refine one, his success rate would be around 80%. Chi Mei was dumbfounded. An 80% success rate? This wasn't the level of a 9th grade pill refiner, was it? Even a 10th grade pill refiner would find it difficult to accomplish this. The 6th grade pill refiners she'd encountered were already fairly impressive existences in the 72 districts, but now there was a 10th grade, perhaps even an 11th grade pill refiner standing in front of her. Chapter 1086. Little brother. No matter how shocking this news was, for some reason, Chi Mei didn't doubt Yi Zichen's words at all. Chi Mei rose from the table, her bright eyes narrowed into slits. Her eyelashes fluttered as she circled Yi Zichen. He's at least a 10th grade alchemist. I can't believe I ran into him. No matter how she thought about it, Chi Mei felt her heart beating wildly. This was a huge treasure trove. If he could capture it, wouldn't he make a killing? Of course, she didn't think she had that kind of strength. However, Yi Zichen had said that as long as he let him go, he'd refine pills for him within his abilities. What kind of concept was a 10th grade alchemist? All the immortal kings in the 72 districts, and even the other divine mountains, would fight over this C condensing pill as soon as it appeared. All she had to do was open her mouth and she'd be able to get it. She might even be able to get a few earthly supremacy elixirs. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't tempted. However, the 5 elements Great Emperor's tomb was still a bit more important. However, it was best to befriend a 10th grade alchemist if possible. Yi Zichen was like a rare animal. When Chi Mei saw him, her hair stood on end. He was really afraid of this woman. She threatened him with death at every turn. More importantly, he couldn't resist her threats. He really couldn't stand it. Do you need me to refine pills? Of course I did. Chi Mei pouted coquettishly. I'm not one of those freaks. I don't think I'll be obstructed when I condense my C. If I could have a C condensing pill to help me, that would be great. Then I will open a furnace for you right now. Yi Zichen didn't hesitate. He took out a pill furnace from his spatial ring and began searching for materials to refine. But you still have to come with me. Yi Zichen's hand, which was already on fire, suddenly froze. He grabbed his head with his left hand, while his face turned even redder under the illumination of the flames. Are you done yet? Little brother alchemist, don't be angry. Chi Mei pouted pitifully, then grabbed Yi Zichen's hand and swung it back and forth. The painting already recognized you as its master. Even if you give it to me, I can't use it. I don't want little big brother to be in danger, but there's no other way. Recognized master. There was actually such a thing? Yi Zichen looked towards the painting on the table. Only then did he notice that the painting really did resonate with him. However, he didn't know when the painting had recognized him as its master. Little big brother, come with me. I can guarantee that you won't encounter any danger. The Five Elements' great emperor also said that as long as you don't take his good fortune, you don't have to avenge him. Then little big brother can go and help open up a tomb and treat it as a tour. Qi Mei's current appearance was nothing short of adorable. Yi Zichen, who'd been so focused on the painting that he hadn't even noticed. When he came back to his senses, he saw Qi Mei, who had started to walk in a cute manner, and goosebumps covered his skin. Be good, don't act cute in front of me. Little brother, you're bad. I've always been like this. Qi Mei's tone was sweet and sweet. She grabbed Yi Zichen's arm and blinked her bright eyes repeatedly. Seeing this, Yi Zichen's expression darkened even further. He drooped his eyelids and snorted with a fake smile. What do you want? Little big brother, do you have a Tao partner? Look at me, aren't I cute? Aren't I beautiful? How about I become your Tao partner? That's nothing. Little big brother. Little big brother. Scram! Qi Mei finally returned to normal after Yi Zichen's angry roar. However, when she looked at Yi Zichen, her gaze was filled with hidden bitterness. It was as if she was angry that he'd yelled at her, or perhaps she was distressed that she couldn't become his Tao partner. In short, Qi Mei looked like a disgruntled wife. Her expression was deathly pale. Yi Zichen directly ignored her gaze. Although she was pretty, her personality was too eccentric and fickle. She'd torment him to death if she became his Tao partner. Besides, he still had little Hong Hong waiting for him. Kiki and the others hadn't been found yet. Seriously, there were so many people who wanted to be his Tao partner. Who did she think she was? I'll go with you to the Five Elements' great emperor's tomb, but I'm not alone. I still have a lot of trivial matters to attend to. Give me 3 days. Give me 3 days, then we'll meet outside Raging Flame City. No! Qi Mei dragged out her words and stared fixedly at Yi Zichen with her dead fish eyes. I can give you 3 days, but I have to stay by your side during that time. Otherwise, if you run off in the next 3 days, how am I supposed to find you? It had to be said, Yi Zichen really did think that way. Although the Five Elements' great emperor had said that if he didn't take her good fortune, he wouldn't have to avenge her, Yi Zichen still didn't think it was safe. However, Yi Zichen still felt that it wasn't too safe, so he wanted to send the woman away and escape through the night. When he saw that his scheme had been exposed, Yi Zichen snorted in annoyance. Then you can stay here. In any case, I'm a man. I won't lose out. With that, Yi Zichen flung his arms and ran to his bed to rest, only to hear Qi Mei's sinister smile. Go to sleep, go to sleep. Once you're asleep. Yi Zichen instantly clutched his blankets and said nervously, What do you think you're doing? For some reason, the atmosphere in the room felt off. Yi Zichen gulped and looked at Qi Mei, only to discover that she was licking her lips seductively. Sweetie, I really want to be your Tao partner. Once you're asleep, I'll have a chance. That night, Yi Zichen didn't sleep at all. He hugged his blankets and tried to sleep, but he kept waking up from his dreams. It wasn't until he discovered that Qi Mei was fast asleep that he realized she was just joking with him. Only then did he relax and fall asleep. 3 days. During these 3 days, Qi Mei followed Yi Zichen like his shadow. When the inn's employees saw her, they were stunned, but they quickly started calling her sister-in-law. Qi Mei didn't object. In fact, she nodded delightedly. Yi Zichen didn't dare explain, for fear of offending her and causing her to stupidly call out Zhou Wu's name again. During these 3 days, Yi Zichen refined life-saving jade slips for Wu Di and Wei Jie. He didn't know how long he'd be gone for, so all he could do was tell them what he needed to tell them and take care of everything he could. Only then could he relax. By the time Yi Zichen finished dealing with everything, it was already the afternoon of the third day. Outside Raging Flame City, Yi Zichen stood by Qi Mei's side. He gazed longingly at the city. If he could, he really didn't want to leave. However, when he saw the clingy woman by his side, Yi Zichen shook his head helplessly like a deflated balloon. Let's go. Little did they know, not long after Yi Zichen left Raging Flame City, something happened in the Axe Gang's 36th district. Chapter 1087. Chapter 1087. Seclusion. The boss of the Axe Gang, Jean Anlin, had just emerged from his private room, his face beaming with joy. Not long ago, he'd finally reached the peak of the sky immortal level. With his current strength, he could absolutely suppress anyone in the profound Great District. Boss! Two elders had been waiting outside for quite some time. When they sensed the ripples of spiritual energy around Jean Anlin, they hurriedly congratulated him. Congratulations, boss! Congratulations on breaking through to the peak of the sky immortal level. Ha ha, congratulations to you too. It was obvious that Jean Anlin was truly in a good mood. One of his attendants took out 2 pills and tossed them to the 2 elders. Human immortal pills. The 2 elders were already Earth immortals. Human immortal pills had long since lost their effects on them. However, they could be given to the clan's juniors. In the 72 districts, where medicinal pills were rare, a human immortal pill was a great reward. The 2 Zhao elders bowed as they stored the pills into their spatial rings. Thank you, boss. Jean Anlin chuckled and waved. Just as he was about to leave, he saw the 2 elders behind him hesitate. What he hated the most in his life was when people hid things from him, so his smiling face instantly darkened. What are you hiding from me? When they sensed Jean Anlin's oppressive aura, the 2 elders gnashed their teeth. The jade slip you sent to Raging Flame City, Division Leader Huang and his trusted aide, Zhao Yi, shattered a month ago. Boom! Instantly, a majestic aura surged out of his body. Bolts of lightning crackled around him. What? The official hall was used by the Axe Gang to discuss official business. The decorations weren't particularly extravagant, but they were extremely domineering. The hall was completely black, making it seem even more sedate. 2 coiling dragon pillars stood in the center. The dragon's eyes weren't lit, but they were incomparably sinister. The elders of the Axe Gang, as well as the retainers who could participate in the meeting, were all present in the conference hall. Jean Anlin sat in a chair at the very front. Faint white lightning crackled around his already tall and sturdy body. His tiger-like eyes stared darkly at the trembling servants who were kneeling on the ground and cleaning the ancestral hall. Boss, I'm a servant in charge of sweeping the hall. Just a few days ago, I went to sweep the hall as usual. Get to the point. Division Leader Huang's soul jade slip and Captain Zhao's soul jade slip have both shattered. The servant trembled in fear. At that moment, the elder to Jean Anlin's left also took out 2 jade slips from his spatial ring and handed them over. Aogu. As he watched Huang Aogu's soul jade slip shatter, Jean Anlin's body trembled. Huang Anlin had no children. Although he hadn't accepted Huang as his own, he'd never had. He didn't have a son. Although Huang Aogu hadn't been adopted by him, he was better than an adopted son. Huang was better than and had been Huang's. He'd hadn't, Jean hadn't, had and had and had and had and had and. He'd left seclusion to train Huang Aogu so that he could one day inherit the position of boss. He'd emerged from seclusion to bring Huang Aogu back. Once he became an immortal king, he'd have to become an elder in the Green Gang. He'd wanted to use his remaining time to personally teach him how to manage the gang, but who would have thought? Aogu! Jean Anlin clutched the jade slip, his emotions spiraling out of control. He set it aside and glared at the people in the hall. Just who was it? Who killed Augu? His roar was like a clap of thunder, and the lightning energy around him kept spitting out its tongue. Everyone in the hall didn't even dare breathe too loudly. Only the elder to Jean Anlin's left managed to endure the pressure and walk to the center of the hall. Reporting to gang leader, after branch leader Huang perished, we conducted an investigation. The gang we established in Raging Flame City has already been shut down by a gang called Upheaval. The gang leader is now a captain of the Axe Gang's branch in Raging Flame City. The vice leader was the second captain at the time. Was it them? Asked Jean Anlin in a low voice. According to our investigation, no. Although those two are currently the gang leader and vice leader of Upheaval, they weren't strong enough to threaten division leader Huang's life. After careful investigation, we discovered that a month ago, division leader Huang's trusted aide provoked a mysterious expert surnamed Yi. Huang Augu sought out that mysterious expert to avenge his aide. However, division leader Huang died after that. In my opinion, the one who killed division leader Huang should be that mysterious expert surnamed Yi. Since you've investigated this thoroughly, why didn't you just take revenge for division leader Huang? Jean Anlin's gaze instantly darkened. Even though he was the gang's grand elder, when faced with his gaze, he broke out in a cold sweat. Boss, you haven't left seclusion yet. We can't. Where is he? Jean Anlin interrupted the elder's words. In Raging Flame City, replied the elder. All right. Jean Anlin nodded calmly, then looked at the elders and retainers in the hall. Take 3,000 elites and capture the villain who killed Augu. I want to see him alive. Also, that Upheaval gang. I don't want to see it continue to exist. Yes, sir. The entire political hall instantly grew cold and cheerless. Jean Anlin leaned back in his chair and looked at the jade slip in his hands. Augu, don't worry. I'll avenge you. I'll definitely grind the person who killed you into 1,000,000 pieces. I'll make sure he never reincarnate. Sweetie, you're so slow. Chi Mei walked along the ancient path outside Raging Flame City. She spoke to Yi Zichen in an extremely cute voice. To tell the truth, Yi Zichen really didn't have the fortune to enjoy her coquettish voice. All he could do was smile helplessly and say, "Can you be a little more normal for me? If you let me be your Dao partner, I'll be normal again. How about that, sweetie?" Chi Mei batted her eyelashes. It seemed Yi Zichen's angry rebuke hadn't completely shaken her. Over the past few days, she'd done everything she could to become his Dao partner. You said I've seen everything, but I've never seen anyone so eager to be my Dao partner, said Yi Zichen helplessly. He shrugged. Can you stop pestering me? I won't. I'm so cute. Why don't you like me? I already have a Dao partner and more than one. Then you don't need me, do you? Just take one for me. Were all God race girls this open-minded? Back then, little Hong Hong didn't care how many women he had. Now, Chi Mei didn't care either. Tell me, how exactly can you return to normal? Yi Zichen was speechless. So long as I can do it, I'll satisfy you. Really? Really? Chapter 1088. Pay me. When he saw Chi Mei's expectant expression, Yi Zichen couldn't help but facepalm. It was just a pill. Couldn't she have said so earlier? It wasn't like it was particularly troublesome. Was there really a need for her to hang out with him for the past few days? When Chi Mei noticed the change in Yi Zichen's expression, she thought he wasn't willing. Sweetie. In truth, she'd never been like this. In the past, she'd treated everyone with disdain. But when it came to Yi Zichen, she couldn't act the same. She really had no choice. The sea-condensing pill was far too important to her. She was already at the peak of the sky rank. Once she passed this secret realm, becoming an immortal king was practically a done deal. If she wanted to become a supreme, she'd have to condense her spiritual sea into divine power. Sea condensation was to condense one's spiritual sea into a spiritual pill rather than a vessel. Rumor had it that the chances of failure were fairly high. The slightest mistake could shatter the pill and shatter the cultivator's seed, causing them to lose their cultivation. Who knew how many god kings were worried about failing? That was why they'd scattered their spiritual seed, leaving themselves on the verge of condensing their spiritual seed, but unable to do so. Of course, condensing one's seed into a pill also meant undergoing Phoenix Nirvana. So long as they succeeded, they'd successfully ascend to the divine mountains. Quite a few god kings wanted to give it their all, but without the support of a seed condensing pill, if they failed, they'd spend the rest of their lives in mediocrity. The seed condensing pill's purpose was to increase the density of the spiritual seed, making it easier to condense a pill. Chi Mei had seen far too many failed seed condensing attempts. Even she was a little afraid. She had far too many unfulfilled wishes, and to accomplish them, she had to ascend to the divine mountains. She had to succeed. The seed condensing pill was a bargaining chip that increased her chances of success. She had to get it. Sweetie, sweetie, just promise me. She was clearly in a hurry to obtain the 5 elements' great emperor's good fortune, but when she saw Yi Zichen's expression, she sat on the ground and shook his hand like a spoiled child. Yi Zichen was finally afraid of her. He pulled his hand out helplessly. Fine, fine, fine. I'll let you refine it. Really? You're such a kind-hearted sweetie. The way Chi Mei saw it, Yi Zichen wasn't as arrogant as other pill refiners. Just look at the group of alchemists she had seen. In the Sky Great District, a mere 6th-level alchemist was treated as an honored guest by all the major clans and powers. They received a rather generous salary, but had no restrictions on their freedom. In the entire Sky Great District, they could do whatever they wanted. Of course, this was understandable. A Tier 6 alchemist could concoct human immortal pills in batches. To be able to continuously produce human immortal-level experts for the clan, those clans had no choice but to treat this existence with caution. Moreover, any alchemist was a force that could not be underestimated. As long as he opened his mouth, there would be many cultivators willing to work for him. Not to mention the reward, it would be good to have an alchemist owe him a favor. Little big brother, you're so good. Could it be that you really don't lack Tao companions? Chi Mei's eyes sparkled as she put on a very infatuated expression. Yi Zichen had thought that she would be able to return to normal after he agreed, but since she was still like this, he decided to just wave his hand. If you continue to be like this, then I won't refine it for you. You don't know how to flirt. When she heard this threat, Chi Mei didn't dare keep up her act. She rose to her feet, dusted herself off, and pursed her lips as if she were displeased by Yi Zichen's indifference. In terms of looks, she didn't think she was bad, and her figure was absolutely tempting. Never mind the fact that she'd thrown herself at him. Even if she just curled her finger, quite a few people would fall over themselves for her. Yet Yi Zichen looked at her with disdain. Chi Mei subconsciously glanced at Yi Zichen's private parts. She was starting to wonder if he was even a normal man. Yi Zichen sensed her strange gaze, but didn't pay it much mind. He arched his brows and said, "Right, how should we calculate the reward?" Chi Mei's disdainful gaze instantly froze. She looked up at Yi Zichen in a daze, as if doubting her own ears. "What did you just say?" "The reward." Yi Zichen shrugged. "You'll have to provide the ingredients yourself. According to normal pill refining rules, you'll need to provide me with 3 sets of ingredients, and I'll refine 1 pill for you. If it fails, I won't take any responsibility, but you still have to pay me for my labor." In the immortal realm, apothecaries were this domineering. The other party had to provide the ingredients for the pill they concocted, and they were not responsible for any failure. Furthermore, they had to pay for their labor as well. This was similar to the hospitals in the modern world. Patients had to be paid for their treatment, and if the surgery failed, they would just say, "We did our best." Chi Mei's lips wriggled, but she didn't say a word for a long time. She didn't hear wrongly. This guy was really asking her for labor fees. She had been acting coquettishly for 3 days and kept throwing herself at him, but in the end it was still less than a service fee. She felt like she'd been severely humiliated. She glared at Yizichin and gnashed her teeth. I will provide 3 sets of materials. How much do you want for the labor fee? The labor cost of a 6th-grade medicinal pill is 500,000, and the price of upgrading it by 1 grade will increase exponentially. How about this? I won't go into the details. Just give me 30 million for the grade 9C condensing pill. Yizichin said with a serious expression. He was far too sensitive towards money. If he were alone, he might not have cared much about money. However, he'd established Upheaval as a money-squandering den. He spent money like water. As the leader of the gang, he naturally had to consider the interests of the gang. In truth, he was already offering a very low price. If it were any other pill refiner, a grade 8 pill would cost over 10 million, not to mention a grade 9C condensing pill, the most difficult pill to refine and the most important. Never mind 30 million, even 3 pills at that price would be enough for a group of immortal kings to fight over. Chi Mei's face was practically green. She bit her soft, pink lips and instinctively clenched her fists. If it weren't for the fact that Yizichin was her sweetie pill refiner, she really would have slapped him to death. 30 million it is. She squeezed the words out through clenched teeth. Chi Mei was a lone ranger. She had no family backing her. Even if she was at the peak of the sky grade and had good fortune, her savings were only enough to buy 3 sets of C condensing pill materials. As for 30 million, she'd probably have to ask her friends to pool it together. No matter how angry Chi Mei was, Yizichin nodded and smiled as if he hadn't noticed, then reached out his hand. Then let's have a pleasant partnership. Black-hearted sweetie. She reluctantly put her hand down, but Yizichin continued to smile as if he hadn't heard. He absolutely wouldn't give up on money. For the sake of his gang. For the sake of his future standing on the divine mountains, he had to continue being black-hearted. Kindness doesn't command soldiers, and righteousness doesn't amass wealth. Chapter 1089. The Painted World. As soon as this thought popped into his head, he couldn't stop himself. If not for Chi Mei holding him back, Yizichin might have already returned to Raging Flame City and made a beeline for the Sky Great District. So many immortal kings were anxiously waiting for C condensing pills. If he went, he'd be overflowing with wealth. Yizichin's eyes gradually lit up with the color of a miser. He could practically see spirit coins growing wings and flying towards him. Miser. Chi Mei gnashed her teeth in hatred and kicked the stones on the side of the road with her little feet. Yizichin naturally noticed her actions. He knew that he'd acted too miserly just now. Chi Mei was still angry, so it was best not to reveal such an expression. Ahem, shouldn't we be on our way? His question was pointless. Chi Mei rolled her eyes at him, her gaze filled with disdain. So you know how to hurry? And here I thought you'd let money get to your head and forget your sense of direction. Hey, if you say that again, then we can forget about our previous agreement. You. The C condensing pill was Chi Mei's weakness, just like Zhou Wu was Yizichin's weakness. When he saw Chi Mei so frightened by the pill that she couldn't even speak, Yizichin couldn't help but laugh inwardly. That's what you got for trying to scare me. I'll let you have a taste of what it's like to be threatened. He absolutely couldn't give up on the C condensing pill. Chi Mei patiently stopped provoking Yizichin, then took out the painting of mountains and rivers and reached out to him. What? What do you mean what? We've arrived. Give me the painting and we'll head straight over. Yizichin couldn't help but look to the sides of the path. There were ancient trees of unknown age, as well as a few grotesquely shaped boulders. When he probed with his immortal awareness, he sensed no fluctuations of spiritual formations. Yet Chi Mei said they'd arrived. Yizichin couldn't help but frown, but he didn't question her too much. He handed the painting over. After receiving the mountain-river diagram, Chi Mei placed the 2 diagrams on a boulder. There was nothing special about this boulder, and it looked even more ordinary in this rugged ancient path. Just as Yi Zichen was examining the strange stone, he noticed that the mountain and river diagram he'd placed on top of the stone actually fused with it, which transformed into a small mountain that resembled a human palm, but was missing a finger. The small mountain rumbled, and an invisible barrier instantly pierced through Yi Zichen and Qi Mei's bodies. The next moment, Yi Zichen's vision went white. When he turned around, he'd already reappeared in an endless sea. This is the place to row a boat in the landscape painting. Yi Zichen's shock was indescribable. All he could do was stand on the clouds in the sky and watch everything unfold before him. The lake water looked very clear, but it was impossible to see more than half a meter below the surface. The surface of the lake was very quiet. Only a light breeze would cause faint ripples on the surface of the lake. When the ripples disappeared, the surface of the lake returned to normal, as if the entire world had stopped. There was a stone mountain in the center of the lake. Just the part of the mountain above the water's surface was more than 10,000 feet tall. No one knew how much was beneath the surface. However, it was easy to imagine just how shocking the scene would be if the mountain was completely on the ground. A fiery red sun hung above the mountain's head. It radiated warm light, but for a long time it didn't move in the slightest. It remained suspended at the top of the mountain the entire time. Just like when he was in the landscape painting, everything was still. There was no aura of life here. The only thing he could sense was the 5 elements of heaven and earth. Furthermore, they were extremely clear here. Yi Zichen stood there for only a few breaths of time, but his understanding of the 5 elements deepened considerably. As for the other Taoist arts, it was as if they didn't exist. He couldn't sense them at all. Humph, surprised, right? Qi Mei seized the opportunity to tease him. However, when she'd first arrived, she'd been just like Yi Zichen. Heaven and earth were completely still, and all Taos had been abandoned here. Only the power of the 5 elements could be used. Yi Zichen nodded. There was no need to pretend. Everything here was far too strange. Never mind him. Even if someone from the Divine Mountains were here, they'd probably be in the same state as him. This is actually a world within a painting, said Qi Mei calmly. Painting? You mean we're inside that landscape painting? He'd thought the stone mountain had sent them to an isolated space. He never would have guessed they were inside a painting. That's right. Even though Qi Mei had come here a few times already, she still couldn't help but sigh. The 5 elements' great emperor was just too powerful. Just as he was about to die, he forcefully opened up this painting into a world of his own and sealed his tomb here. At the same time, he sealed the great Tao of the 5 elements outside into this painting. The mountains, water, sun, wind. They're all formed from the 5 elements. Yi Zichen was astonished. He'd created a world within a painting and sealed the great Tao of the 5 elements. Just how strong was the 5 elements' great emperor? More importantly, how strong was the God Emperor? Regardless of whether he'd ambushed the 5 elements' great emperor or not, whether he'd usurped celestial fate, stolen good fortune, or stolen the rightful throne, if he'd managed to kill the 5 elements' great emperor with a sneak attack, even if he wasn't as strong as the 5 elements' great emperor, he wasn't far off. He absolutely couldn't take the good fortune here. If he did, he wouldn't be able to live any longer. Are you thinking that you absolutely can't touch good fortune? Qi Mei seemed to see right through Yi Zichen's thoughts. She couldn't help but laugh. It's too late. The moment you entered this place, you already took good fortune. Don't be ridiculous. I didn't even enter the tomb. I didn't even take a single spirit coin. How could I have obtained good fortune? Yi Zichen rolled his eyes. The way he saw it, Qi Mei was definitely going to get revenge on the God Emperor. He didn't want to get dragged into this mess. No matter how he looked at it, revenge wasn't realistic. Could it be that the power of the 5 elements isn't? It doesn't matter which of the 5 elements you cultivate. Once you're here, you'll gain a deeper understanding of them. Isn't that good fortune? Chi Mei's eyes flashed with a faint sneer as she looked at the boundless lake. The 5 elements great emperor set us up. He said good fortune lies within the tomb, but once we stepped in, we had no choice but to side with him. You've already touched karma. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't shake it off. Yi Zichen stood on the clouds, his expression shifting repeatedly. After a while, he glared at Chi Mei and roared, "Since you already knew, why did you lie to me and say? Since you already knew, then why did you lie to me and say that you tricked me?" Sensing Yi Zichen's fury, Chi Mei smiled calmly. Chapter 1090. The black-faced monster and the spiritual sword. Only now did Yi Zichen understand that he'd boarded a pirate ship. From the crafty look on Chi Mei's face, it was clear she'd known all along. She hadn't told him before because she'd wanted him to join them. Yi Zichen gazed bitterly at the boundless lake. He wanted to cry, but no tears would come. At this point, he wasn't the type to find fault with others. Since he'd already encountered good fortune, he'd already been stained with karma. All he could say was that this was fate. He hurriedly held his breath and focused on comprehending the power of the 5 elements. Although his understanding of the 5 elements would only increase slightly, at least he wouldn't feel like he'd lost out too much. Chi Mei watched from the side. She found it funny, but she forced herself not to laugh. After all this, she found this pill refiner rather cute. However, when he was greedy, he was truly annoying. Weren't there 3 people in the painting? It's just the 2 of us now. Are we going to stay here forever? Although the power of the 5 elements here is pretty good, I feel like staying here for too long is a waste of time. You don't need to worry about that. The master of the last painting arrived a long time ago. With that, Chi Mei pointed at the mountain in the distance. Yi Zichen looked in the direction of her finger and noticed a small black dot on the surface of the lake. The black dot seemed to blend in with the mountain and the lake. If he didn't look closely, he wouldn't notice it at all. You should be glad that I'm the one who found you this time. We found this place more than 10 years ago, but the master of the 3rd painting never showed up. We agreed that each year, one of us would go to the 72 districts to search for the master of the last painting. Coincidentally, it was my turn this year. That guy's an arrogant loner. If he finds you, he definitely won't treat you well. Chi Mei looked as if she'd let him find you, but Yi Zichen didn't think that way. He thought about how she'd stuck to him like glue for the past few days, and how she'd pretended to be cute and cuddly with him. These were definitely not good memories. They were nightmares. Yi Zichen laughed dryly at Chi Mei. She could tell what he was thinking. His smug expression faded, and he no longer treated her kindly. He walked up to the black dot. When he got closer, Yi Zichen finally saw clearly that the person sitting on the lake was a young man. He was wearing a coarse cloth robe, and from head to toe, there was no trace of a treasure. Sitting cross-legged on the surface of the lake, he was barefooted, with a rusty longsword resting on his legs. Even when Yi Zichen and the others arrived by his side, he didn't open his eyes. Only when Chi Mei called out, "Hey, black-faced monster!" The man on the lake instantly opened his eyes. In an instant, an invincible sharpness burst forth from his eyes. His entire person was like an unsheathed sword, filled with killing intent. Hiss! Yi Zichen sucked in a breath of cold air. Even he was shocked by the sharpness. What's more, when he opened his eyes, the rusted sword on his leg seemed to have changed. "I repeat, I am your brother," the man on the lake said indifferently. His sword-like eyebrows were slightly furrowed. He didn't like the way Chi Mei addressed him. Only then did he notice Yi Zichen by Chi Mei's side. "So he's the 3rd person? You're too late. I've been waiting for you for a full 15 years. It was no wonder that Chi Mei said he had a dark face. From the beginning to the end, his face had always been dark, as if he was very impatient with this world. He looked at Yi Zichen with an especially unfriendly gaze, as if he were blaming Yi Zichen for taking so long to appear and wasting so much of his time. At first, Yi Zichen was astonished. So this black-faced monster was Chi Mei's older brother? Be it in terms of appearance or personality, they didn't seem like siblings in the slightest. But later, he started complaining about Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen said that if he let go of his old temper, he'd slap him without a second thought. Who was he supposed to be with the two of them? However, he hadn't fully grasped the world of the painting yet, so he hadn't stayed as long as this black-faced monster. Secondly, for Chi Mei's sake, he didn't want to bicker with him. Of course, at the end of the day, Yi Zichen was worried about that rusted sword. The body of the sword was already covered in rust, and the rusty blade did not seem to be very sharp. In terms of appearance alone, this rusted sword couldn't even compare to an ordinary iron sword. Even so, Yi Zichen couldn't help but take a few glances at the rusted blade. He vaguely didn't want to provoke it. "I'll spare your life," Yi Zichen muttered to himself, but he didn't want to bicker with him. "How can you speak to me like that? I'm telling you, be more polite when you speak to me, got it?" Chi Mei put her hands on her hips and stepped forward. Black-faced monster seemed shocked that Chi Mei would refute him on Yi Zichen's behalf. His gaze swept back and forth between her and Yi Zichen. At that moment, the iron sword in his hand trembled slightly. His eyes flashed with what looked like surprise, then he forced a smile and reached out to Yi Zichen. However, his smile wasn't as comfortable as his dark expression. "Wu-yi." Yi Zichen was surprised by black-faced monster's sudden change in attitude. Earlier, this brat seemed to dislike him. Could it be that he was afraid of Chi Mei's words? Yi Zichen didn't understand, but he still reached out. "Yi Zichen, you've earned my little sister's and my sword's approval. Not bad." Although black-faced monster seemed to have put down his arrogance, his tone was still as lofty as ever. But that wasn't the main point. The main point was his sword. He said his sword approved of Yi Zichen. That meant the sword had a spirit. Yi Zichen's heart skipped a beat. No wonder he'd felt so dangerous. It was actually a divine artifact with a spirit. "Alright, since we're all here, let's hurry up and get started. I've already wasted too much time here. I don't have much time left." With that, he flipped his hand and produced a painting of mountains and rivers. Chi Mei stuck her tongue out at him, then flipped her hand and produced two paintings of mountains and rivers. Yi Zichen was stunned once more. They clearly weren't in the world of the painting, so why had the paintings appeared again? "Ha ha ha, you don't understand, do you?" Chi Mei laughed mischievously. After spending the past few days with her, and considering how she'd acted when they'd first met, Yi Zichen was starting to wonder just which personality was the real her. "If you want me to be your Tao partner, I'll tell you." Black-faced monster's body stiffened. His eyes brimmed with disbelief, but what followed was even more unbelievable. "Can you scram?" Yi Zichen pushed Chi Mei away in disgust. When he looked at her, he discovered that his little sister wasn't angry at all. Instead, she acted like a spoiled child and tried to throw herself at him? Chapter 1091. Chapter 1091. Chi Mei. When he saw Yi Zichen and Chi Mei playing around, Grizzly Face's expression darkened even further. He frowned and roared in anger. A sharp aura burst forth from his body, as sharp as an unsheathed blade. Yi Zichen had his back to him, but when he sensed that aura, he couldn't help but arch his brows. However, the aura only appeared for an instant before disappearing. Even so, his expression was still as dark as ever, as if someone owed him money. "So you're an immortal king." Although Grizzly Face had only revealed his strength for a breath of time, Yi Zichen could sense his immortal king-level power. Chi Mei clearly didn't take his rebuke seriously. She stuck her tongue out at him and ignored him. "Chi Mei, stop playing around. This isn't the time for you to mess around." No matter how you looked at it, it sounded like a half-sentence. Perhaps there was a hidden meaning behind it, but out of consideration for Yi Zichen's presence, Grizzly Face didn't say it. His brows were perpetually furrowed. Chi Mei froze, But when she saw Grizzly Face's expression, she seemed to realize that he was truly angry. She had no choice but to purse her lips and toss the paintings at the sun. At the same time, she explained in detail, "We really are inside a painting right now. We are indeed inside a painting. The painting that I threw out just now was just an illusion of the scroll. It's just like this enormous mountain formed from the earth of the 5 elements. It's necessary. Buried beneath this mountain is the 5 elements' great emperor's tomb. That illusory painting is the key to opening it." Before she even finished speaking, Yizichin watched as she tossed the 3 paintings to the top of the mountain and fused them into a complete painting of mountains and rivers. Under the scorching sun, at the top of the mountain river diagram began to burn from the center. When the diagram disappeared, 3 keys appeared, drilling directly to the top of the huge mountain. Rumble! The beautiful landscape was suddenly covered by dark clouds and a torrential downpour. Strangely, the rain fell only within the mountain range. As for the surrounding lake, not a single drop touched it. Wow! Yizichin had no time to sigh. As the magical rain fell, the mountain range changed. The entire mountain split right down the middle, and a crack appeared in it. Although the crack was right in front of Yizichin, no matter how hard he looked, all he saw was darkness. "Let's go." The black-faced monster, Wu Yi, revealed an excited expression. The moment the mountain gate opened, he impatiently flew toward the crack. "Let's go too." Chi Mei also smiled faintly and flew towards the fissure. Yizichin hesitated. To him, his life was the most important. He didn't even know what was inside that crack. If he went in and encountered some killing array, what to do? However, what made him feel conflicted was that even if he stayed here, he didn't know how to get out of this painting. Don't underestimate him. He was an immortal king who was about to completely transform his divine power. With his immortal senses, be it calculating or searching for details, they were quite powerful. But when he entered this landscape painting, he couldn't see anything special about it. However, in comparison, Wu Yi and Chi Mei seemed to know everything like the back of their hands. Although they'd said they'd been here for more than 10 years, Yizichin was certain that if they'd been able to discover the secret, it would have been more than enough time for them to discover it. But if they hadn't, then there was something wrong with Chi Mei and Wu Yi. What's more, this was a completely unfamiliar environment. The fissure had only just opened, yet they didn't feel the slightest sense of danger when faced with the impenetrable fissure. It was as if this was their home. "Sweetie, let's go. Once the fissure closes, you'll never be able to leave again. If you want to leave the painting, you'll have to go through the tomb." Chi Mei stopped just as they were about to reach the fissure. She couldn't lose this sweetie. She still needed him to refine her condensing pills. Yizichin remained in place, his thoughts racing. At his level, countless thoughts could be processed with a single thought. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they come. From the moment he'd opened the painting to Chi Mei looking for him, to the moment they'd entered this place, the siblings were completely unperturbed. Both Wu Yi and Chi Mei were filled with suspicions. But Yizichin wasn't a pushover. He wasn't a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. He'd just have to take things one step at a time. "I'm here." Yizichin chuckled, then hurried over to Chi Mei's side. "There seems to be some sort of seal around this fissure. There's no way to investigate what's going on inside. Won't your brother run into any problems if he just goes in?" "I don't think so. The 5 Elements' great emperor left this tomb for his descendants, so that they could avenge him. If there's danger inside, what's the point of leaving this tomb?" Chi Mei's explanation was simple, but no one could find any fault with it. Yizichin carefully took in her expression as she spoke, then nodded. "You're right. I was overthinking things. It's fine to be careful. Let's hurry up and go in. Otherwise, that grumpy freak's going to scowl at us again." They entered the fissure. As expected, there was a whole new world inside. Inside the crack was a mausoleum, and they were at the entrance of the mausoleum after coming in through the crack. The two stone lions at the entrance were lifelike. Yizichin couldn't help but glance at them a few times, but when their eyes met, he saw that the lion had come to life. It grew to a size of over 100 feet and crawled in front of the mausoleum's entrance. Its crimson eyes glared at him, then it stomped the ground a few times and pounced at him. "Didn't you say there wouldn't be any danger?" Just as the lion was about to pounce on him, Yizichin hurriedly retreated. The lion's claws just so happened to land on his chest, leaving several bloody gashes. Faint golden blood flowed down his chest. When the lion smelled blood, it became even more bloodthirsty, and its attacks grew even more frenzied. "Chi-Mei, didn't you say there wouldn't be any danger here?" Yizichin roared angrily at her, only to discover that she stood rooted to the spot. No matter how much he shouted, she didn't respond at all. At that moment, the lion in its true form opened its bloody maw and bit down on Chi-Mei. Yizichin wanted to save her, but the lion was glaring at him. Crunch! The lion closed its jaws and bit off Chi-Mei's head. Blood spurted out from her neck like a fountain, but Chi-Mei still maintained her standing posture, letting the lion gnaw at her until there was nothing left. At the same time, they heard a blood-curdling scream in the distance. Yizichin saw a lion following behind the grumpy freak. After the lion bit him until he couldn't fight back, the lion left him for the young trainers behind him, then walked towards Yizichin. Chapter 1092. Was he going to die again? The situation was dire. Yizichin stood before the 100-foot-tall lions, looking as insignificant as an ant. The black-faced monster's screams grew fainter and fainter, while Chi-Mei had been devoured so thoroughly that not even a strand of her hair remained. The acrid stench of blood permeated the mausoleum. Not only did it provoke Yizichin, it also provoked the surrounding lions. "Hey bro, can we sit down and have a chat?" Yizichin didn't know how this mausoleum was set up, but after retreating a few dozen meters, he found himself in a bottomless abyss. He couldn't fly here either. The lions had already forced him into dire straits. He greeted the lion that seemed to be the leader of this pride of lions. However, what made him feel despair was that his friendly smile was exchanged for the collective roar of the pride of lions. "That's way too unfriendly. You must be the 5 Elements Great Emperor's guardian beasts, right? Hey, look carefully. I'm a good friend of the 5 Elements Great Emperor." All he got in response was another deafening roar, and the lions pressed closer. He instinctively took a step back, but when he stepped off the edge of the cliff, he fell into the abyss. After a long while, there was no response at all. From this, it was clear just how deep the abyss was. Yizichin gulped, then looked around vigilantly at the lions. It was unlikely for him to communicate with them, and the chances of him breaking through directly was still slim. No matter how agile Yizichin's thoughts were, he couldn't see any chance of survival. Chi-Mei is right. The 5 Elements Great Emperor sent them here, but he shouldn't have let them die. Or perhaps this mausoleum was set up in order to lure his descendants to their deaths, so that he wouldn't feel lonely in his eternal slumber? If that's really the case, then the 5 Elements Great Emperor's sense of humor is too twisted. The way Yizichin saw it, there was definitely a way to break out of this mausoleum, but he just couldn't figure it out. The lions drew even closer to Yizichin. They seemed in no hurry to devour him. Rather, they wanted to toy with him. Their steps were extremely slow, but they were like a death knell, constantly reminding Yizichin that his life was nearing its end. "Do they really think I'm easy to bully?" With that, Yizichin charged directly at the lions. Several 5-meter-long fireballs instantly appeared behind him. When the fireball appeared, he didn't expect it to be instantaneous. Even someone like him, who dabbled in the power of the 5 elements, could do it in an instant. It seemed like the Tao of the 5 elements here was quite clear. Maybe this is the way to break out of this situation. As he considered this, Yizichin's heart burned with passion. In the blink of an eye, more and more fireballs appeared behind him, then merged together to form a sea of flames several hundred meters wide. Beasts were all afraid of fire. When they saw such a dazzling sea of fire, those ferocious lions actually took a step back. "Little brats, weren't you all very arrogant just now?" The sea of flames behind him was all he could rely on. When he saw the murderers retreat, Yi Zichen suddenly regretted not thinking about this in the first place. If he'd done that, he might have been able to save Chi Mei and the others. "Chi Mei, although you're terrible at pretending to be cute, if you die, I will avenge you. And Blackface, I will avenge you." Boom. The sea of fire behind him suddenly engulfed the group of lions. The lions were terrified of the fire and kept retreating. However, when they reached the mausoleum's gates, they seemed to have retreated to their limit. They stopped and roared uneasily. Roar! At that moment, the lion leader let out a low roar and charged into the sea of flames. After him, several lions followed it and charged into the sea of fire. "You're seeking death." The sea of flames never stopped growing, but to his surprise. Roar! The lion leader charged out of the sea of flames, his body blazing with raging flames. The flames charred almost all of his brown fur. His eyes were filled with hatred as he pounced on Yi Zichen. His strength was so great that the instant Yi Zichen hit the ground, all of his bones were crushed. Yi Zichen struggled to stay conscious despite the heart-wrenching pain. He watched helplessly as the lion leader's bloody maw closed in on him. Am I going to die again? The mere thought of it was laughable. He'd gone through so much trouble to reincarnate and decide to fly to the God realm, but he hadn't even ascended the divine mountains. He still hadn't verified Xia Kik's information. He still hadn't visited the netherworld, where Su Yun's soul might be. He still hadn't resolved his misunderstanding with Su Yen. He still hadn't married little Hong Hong. He had far too many unfulfilled desires, but now he was going to die. He didn't blame Chi Mei. Things had already come to this, and she was already dead. What else could he complain about? What he hated was the 5 Elements Great Emperor. 5 Elements Great Emperor, you played us! He laughed bitterly. By now, he no longer had the strength to roar. All he could do was smile bleakly as he looked at the lion's bloody maw. Hey Yi Zichen, wake up! Yi Zichen, who'd been prepared to die, suddenly opened his eyes and stared in astonishment. It wasn't a lion, but rather Chi Mei, who'd already been bitten to death. Am I already dead? The lion had been efficient. It hadn't suffered too much, and had given him a quick death. Now that he was dead, he was free of everything. Yi Zichen sat on the ground, his face filled with bitterness. Then, he discovered that the lion cub had bitten to death was standing right in front of him. His face was as dark as ever, just like when he'd been alive. Grumpy freak, you're already dead, so why the hell are you pulling such a long face? What, is this your style? Do you want to keep it this way in your next life? I'm telling you, a girl like you won't like you. Hurry up and change your style, or else I'm worried you'll die alone. Grumpy Freak's face was ashen. He glared at Yi Zichen, as if he wanted to kill him with his gaze alone. What? Who are you trying to scare? If we really fought, you'd have a hard time beating me, you know? Look at your tiny arms and legs. I'm afraid if I use too much force, I'll snap that bone club of yours. Now that he was dead, he no longer cared about the things he'd been worried about when he was alive. Yi Zichen, who died a miserable death, opened his mouth. This time, he directed his words directly at Chi Mei. Big breasts but no brains. That's the perfect example of someone like you. You're still pretending to be cute? Let me tell you, acting cute really is embarrassing. Every time I see you, I can't help but clench my fists and want to punch you in the face. That said, in terms of looks and figure alone, you're actually more than qualified to be my concubine. Chi Mei, who'd been laughing at Grumpy Freak's words, suddenly froze. However, she wasn't nearly as friendly as Grumpy Freak. She directly slapped Yi Zichen across the face. Yi Zichen casually grabbed her arm and snorted disdainfully. You want to hit me? Halfway through his sentence, he stopped. If his senses weren't mistaken. Her hand was warm. Yi Zichen couldn't quite believe his senses. He raised his hand and slapped his thigh. Chapter 1093. Within the mausoleum's courtyard, Yi Zichen was most afraid of sudden silence. When he felt the warmth of his body and the pain in his leg, he inexplicably forced a smile. Grizzled Face's gaze was like a sharp blade drawn from its sheath. It was so cold it sent shivers down his spine. Chi Mei wasn't much better. Her eyes brimmed with fury as she glared at him. Time passed bit by bit in this wordless silence. Ha ha ha! Yi Zichen broke the awkward silence. He smiled relaxedly and looked at Chi Mei and Grizzled Face, rubbing their hands and laughing foolishly. You feel much more relaxed now, don't you? I was just worried you'd be nervous before entering the mausoleum. I'm doing this for your own good. It's getting late. Let's go in early, shall we? His words didn't affect Wu Yi and Chi Mei's gazes in the slightest. Gradually, Yi Zichen's smile turned awkward. He scratched his head and rolled his eyes, speechless. They were still alive. Just now, that lion had clearly eaten him, and Chi Mei and Wu Yi had been eaten by the lions as well. He'd seen it all with his own eyes. How come everything had changed now? When he looked at the mausoleum, he saw that the lions were still stone statues. They hadn't grown to the size he'd seen them before. Big-breasted but brainless. Concubine. Acting cute is so awkward. So that's how Sweetie sees me. Chi Mei crossed her arms and nodded with a faint smile. However, no matter how you looked at it, it was clear she was gnashing her teeth. Don't be like that. I was just joking with you. Why are you so serious? This was truly awkward. Yi Zichen had thought they were all dead, which was why he'd blabbered so carelessly. Who would have guessed they were still alive? In order to avoid continuing this topic, Yi Zichen licked his lips and arched his brows. Goddess Chi Mei, just now I thought I saw the lions eat you and Grizzled Face. What was going on? If you're talking about illusions, I didn't even sense them at all. Everything was so frighteningly real. After hearing Yi Zichen call her goddess, Chi Mei's expression improved somewhat, but her expression was still grim. You're staring at the stone lions in front of the mausoleum, aren't you? These stone lions were the 5 elements' great emperor's guardian divine beasts when they were alive. Even though they became stone statues to guard the mausoleum when the 5 elements' great emperor died, they didn't actually die. Now, it was impossible to tell whether they were alive or dead. But what was certain was that they all had spirit. You should have been hit by their soul attack, and thus the scene you saw in the soul world evolved. I see. Yi Zichen nodded, but didn't dare to look into the lion's eyes again. What he had just experienced felt like it was real. It was too frightening. Don't waste any more time. Let's enter the mansion. At that moment, Grizzled Face hugged his rusted sword to his chest. He glanced coldly at Yi Zichen, but ignored him and walked towards the mausoleum's gates. When he saw Grimace's gaze, Yi Zichen smiled back. It wasn't until Grizzled Face ignored him and headed straight for the mausoleum's gates that he lowered his head and scratched his head. His expression and gaze shifted uncontrollably. This was truly too awkward. Only the 3 of them had come here. His words just now had offended both of them. Yi Zichen couldn't help but smack his mouth and mutter, Yi Zichen, why do you have such a big mouth? Yi Zichen, why is your mouth so annoying? Even if you're really dead, can't you just stop for a moment? Great, I already suspected that there was something wrong with those 2. If there really was something wrong with them, then once we got inside, they'd play you to death. Yi Zichen cursed himself viciously, then set his gaze on Grizzled Face. By now, he was standing in front of the mausoleum's gates, but he didn't push them open. Instead, he bowed deeply to the 2 stone lions. Only then did he reach for the gate. The mausoleum's gates were bronze in color, and each side had a lion's head. Beneath each lion's mouth were 2 metal rings. Grizzled Face grabbed the rings, knocked on the gates a few times, then retreated to the bottom of the stairs. Suddenly, the mausoleum's gates swung open on their own. Yizichin had been staring intently at the mausoleum's gates the entire time. The instant they opened, his eyes widened. It was as if he'd just seen someone open the gates, and that person was wearing a conical bamboo hat. A boatman. An image instantly appeared in his mind. It overlapped with the blurry figure he'd just seen. Yizichin's heartbeat gradually sped up. He realized that ever since he'd arrived here, he hadn't had a moment of peace. Everything here filled him with fear, but when he looked at Chi Mei and Wu Yi, they acted as if nothing had happened. After opening the gates, they bowed deeply to the stone lions, then walked inside. Yizichin followed suit. When they bowed to the stone lions, he bowed as well. Regardless of what they were for, he couldn't go wrong as long as he followed suit. When they entered the mausoleum's front courtyard, another world appeared before them. This time, they appeared in what seemed to be the mausoleum's front courtyard. It was drizzling incessantly, and in front, left, and right of the courtyard was a 100-meter-long, 3-meter-wide gravel path. Both sides of the path were filled with thriving immortal herbs. If they were sold outside, any one of these herbs would be worth cities. If they could bring all of them out, they'd make an astonishing fortune. Yizichin's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. He licked his lips and reached for the immortal herbs. Slap! Chi Mei slapped his outstretched hand away. She said softly, "Don't move." Grizzled Face, who stood at the very front, knit his brows and glanced at Yizichin. Surprisingly, he took the initiative to speak. "If you don't want to die, you'd best not touch anything in this courtyard." With that, Grizzled Face looked away. Yizichin was rather confused. Since they'd already said they'd leave the place for their juniors, why couldn't they take it? As if sensing Yizichin's confusion, Chi Mei picked up a stone from the path and tossed it at the immortal herbs. Whoosh! Before the stone could land in the immortal medicine garden, it was directly burned to pieces by the raging fire in mid-air. "Did you see that?" Chi Mei pursed her lips into a smile and said, "These immortal herbs are indeed real, but there are restrictions left behind by the great emperor on them. The entire courtyard is covered in seals. Only these 3 gravel paths are safe. If you want to obtain everything here, you'll have to gain the mausoleum's approval." Chi Mei. Grizzled Face shouted coldly, then turned around and spoke in a low voice. Chapter 1094. The 5 Daos Gates. Yizichin stared at the immortal herbs, but he couldn't touch them. Ignoring everything else, just based on his understanding of medicine, the herbs here were enough to make dozens of condensing pills. There were also quite a few immortal herbs that even he couldn't name. Just the slightest whiff of their fragrant aroma was enough to relax his mind and open up all his pores. Bear with it. I have to bear with it. He forced himself to restrain his greedy hands, then reluctantly followed Grumpy Face forward. He couldn't just take these immortal herbs. Chi Mei had already demonstrated to him. If he dared stretch his hand out, he feared his hand would end up like the stone and bid him farewell. It was only 100 meters of gravel, but it took them more than an hour to walk. When the black-faced monster stopped at the end of the gravel path, the pattering rain in the courtyard also disappeared. Just a few steps away, the rain continued to fall. The room at the end of the path was different from ordinary residences. Normally, residences had a main hall in the front courtyard. However, this was a long wing with 5 doors. Each door had the words wind, rain, thunder, lightning, and fire written on it. Black-Faced Devil didn't say anything. He just walked up to Lei's room and pushed the door open. He didn't say anything. "Should we go in too?" When he saw Grumpy Face leave, Yizichin couldn't help but ask. Right now, all he could ask was Chi Mei. On the way here, she really was the type to answer every question he asked. He went into the lightning because he's of the lightning attribute. Are you the same? If you're the same, then just follow me in. Yizichin didn't quite understand. When she saw his dazed expression, Chi Mei couldn't help but purse her lips. She clasped her hands behind her back and continued. From here on out, we'll have to split up and search for our own good fortune. The 5 doors here correspond to the 5 elements of heaven and earth, as well as the 5 elements. Just go in and see what your type is. No need to worry, there won't be any danger. Probably. Yizichin understood everything she said. There was no need for the 3 of them to stick together. They'd have to start searching for their own good fortune. However, Chi Mei's final, probably, made his heart hang in his throat. Could it be that they might run into danger inside? Don't scare me. Now was no time to pretend to be a man. He had to be a coward. Yizichin looked nervously at Chi Mei and furrowed his brows. I value my life a lot, and I already told you on the way here. I can choose not to take the fortune here, but I absolutely cannot die. Didn't you say that if you want to leave, you have to leave from here? Then hurry up and tell me how to leave. I don't want this fortune anymore. Hurry up and tell me how. Chi Mei pursed her lips at the door, crossed her arms, and pouted. Chi Mei's tone was always laced with a faint hint of danger, and she deliberately magnified it. Chi Mei's tone was always accompanied by a faintly discernible sense of danger, and she was deliberately amplifying it. Yizichin stared at Chi Mei's face for a long time, then licked his lips, reached out and grabbed her arm. He blinked and swayed back and forth, just like she'd done before. Yizichin stared at her for a long time, then licked his lips, reached out, grabbed her arm, and blinked. Big sister, you're more familiar with this place, so don't scare me like that, all right? You're so beautiful, and I can tell you're a kind-hearted angel. Can't you give me some pointers? When she saw this, Chi Mei was both angry and amused. He was doing this on purpose, wasn't he? He was copying her. Not only was he copying her, but he was doing it in such a nondescript way. Did he think she was acting cute? Was he really that disgusting? However, when she recalled Yizichin's earlier coldness, Chi Mei shook his hand off. Go play by yourself. Big sister. Big sister. Yizichin clung to her arm relentlessly and shook it back and forth like a spoiled child. Chi Mei's heart wasn't made of stone to begin with, so he shook her to the point of trembling. After a moment's thought, she decided not to bicker with him. She sighed, then pointed at the 5 doors. In truth, these rooms are all dangerous, but they're all different. Lightning is the most dangerous, but it's also the greatest of all. Fire is second, then wind is third. The most gentle of them all should be rain. What's your attribute? What attribute? All attributes. Yizichin could enter all 5 rooms, but he had to keep an eye out. When faced with a question he couldn't answer, he narrowed his eyes and smiled. She knew he didn't want to answer, so Chi Mei didn't pursue the matter. You have your own secrets, so I won't force you to tell me. Are you going in or not? Think about it for a bit. Blackface's already been in there for so long. I have to hurry up as well. As she spoke, Chi Mei pushed open the door to the room with the word fire written on it and disappeared. Yizichin remained behind and stared at the rooms in a daze for a long time. If safety was his #1 priority, then he definitely had to go to the rain room. Chi Mei had already said that the rain room was the safest of all. If he wanted to risk his life, then he naturally had to go to the lightning room. Danger and reward coexisted. If he could survive, he'd absolutely become a powerful figure. Yizichin didn't think he wanted to take that extreme route. Going to the rain room was better. But the moment his hand touched the door, all the doors suddenly disappeared. Yizichin stared dumbly at the vanished rooms. His eyes widened. Hey, no! If the doors disappeared, how was he supposed to get out? Just as he was starting to panic, another door appeared in the long wing. There was nothing on this door, so he had no way of knowing which of the 5 elements it belonged to. Especially since this door had appeared so suddenly after the first one had disappeared. It was as if it had been specially prepared for Yizichin. This was too freaking strange. Yizichin stood in front of the door and licked his lips. He didn't want to touch anything that was filled with unknown dangers. Chi Mei and Wu Yi had already gone in. If they came out, especially Chi Mei. If she wanted the sea condensing pill, she'd definitely take him out. In that case, Yi Zichen might as well not go in. He didn't want to face unknown dangers and run into a bunch of strange things. Yi Zichen casually sat down with his back to the door, then looked at the herb garden before him. His eyes darted back and forth a few times. If Chi Mei or Wu Yi obtained the courtyard's inheritance and opened the restriction, he would be able to steal some immortal herbs the instant the restriction was opened. Wouldn't that be perfect? Little did he know, just as he was thinking about how many immortal herbs he could steal, he didn't notice the door behind him. Chapter 1095. Someone from the Axe Gang. When the last strand of spiritual energy entered Wu Di's spiritual sea, he stepped into the ranks of human immortals. This is the power of a human immortal. The immortal condensation pill had played a significant role in allowing him to smoothly step into the human immortal stage. Wu Di clenched his fists, excitement flashing in his eyes. Becoming a human immortal meant that he was one of the few peak experts in Raging Flame City. Right now, he was strong enough to head to the profound Great District. Even there, he'd be able to secure a place for himself. I have to tell Master quickly. By now, Yi Zichen's place in Wu Di's heart was incomparably high. He hadn't even considered informing his family about his breakthrough. Rather, he wanted to tell Yi Zichen as soon as possible, so that his master would be happy. Pushing open the door, the maids and servants outside respectfully greeted him as young master. He'd never experienced this sort of treatment before. All of this, if he really had to count it all, then perhaps it really was all thanks to his master. Wu Di had no choice but to thank his master. He nodded to the servant in the courtyard and was just about to leave when he saw a few guest chamberlains of the clan already waiting outside their door. "Young master, the great supreme elder invites you over." Wu Di couldn't help but frown. The Grand Elder was a reclusive existence in the Wu family. He was Wu Wenguang's second uncle, and in terms of seniority, he was Wu Di's second grandfather. However, ever since he was young, he had never seen his second grandfather. Even after he became the Wu family's Qilin's son, he had never seen him. Why would he suddenly look for her? Although he had some doubts in his heart, no matter what, he was still an elder of the clan. It wouldn't be good if he didn't go. Then, please lead the way. When they arrived at the front of the hall, the two foreign chamberlains stopped and cupped their fists. "Grand Elder, the Qilin's son Wu Di has arrived." "He's here? Let him in." A forceful reply came from the hall. The two retainers took 2 steps back, then gestured for Wu Di to enter. "Young Master Wu, this way please." Wu Di walked into the main hall and saw several elders sitting there. Most of the elders were from the Li family. A white-haired old man sat on a chair at the front of the hall. He had a dignified aura around him. Wu Di greets the Grand Elder and the other elders. After becoming the Wu family's Qilin's son, Wu Di had grown much more confident. Even in the face of the gazes of so many elders, he was still able to maintain a calm heart as he stood calmly in the main hall. "Not bad," the first Supreme Elder faintly said, but after a simple compliment, he spoke again. "Little Dini, I heard that it's all thanks to your master that you've improved so much?" "Yes," replied Wu Di, neither servile nor overbearing. "Wu Di's accomplishments today are all thanks to master's guidance. Since that's the case, why don't you invite your master to our Wu family? I've been in seclusion these past few days. If Wenguang hadn't gone to the profound Great District, I'm afraid I wouldn't have come out. But after I left, I never would have guessed that our Wu family would gain a Qilin's son. I've learned a bit about you, and I'd really like to meet your master." The first Supreme Elder smiled, but that smile was somewhat forced. Wu Di was no longer the Wu Di of the past. He knew how to read people's expressions, and he could also notice minor details. The first Supreme Elder's behavior was strange. He could see it clearly. "My master is used to living like a cloud in the wild. He's not good at socializing. In order to avoid embarrassing him, I think it's best to forget about it. For Yi Zichen's sake, Wu Di had publicly refused to give the first Supreme Elder face. Little Dini. The first Supreme Elder seemed like he was about to try and persuade Wu Di, but at that moment, two men with axes embroidered on the front of their robes walked out from behind him. How troublesome! The one who spoke was the younger of the two. When the first Supreme Elder saw them, he hurriedly rose to his feet, smiled apologetically, and bowed. Your Excellency! The Axe Gang. Wu Di frowned. His master had already destroyed Raging Flame City's Axe Gang. Others might not know this, but as his disciple, he knew. Now that these two had appeared in the Wu family estate, it was obvious that the Axe Gang's headquarters in the profound Great District had sent them. Not good. They want to make trouble for Master. He had no time to think, but as soon as the two men appeared, Wu Di dashed out of the main hall. When the first Supreme Elder and the slightly older member of the Axe Gang saw this, he waved his right hand and the doors slammed shut. The entire hall went dark. At the same time, the younger Axe Gang expert reached out to grab Wu Di. Scram! Wu Di threw a punch at the Axe Gang expert. You could say he used 100% of his strength. The power of a human immortal instantly burst forth. The Axe Gang expert was only a mid-stage human immortal. He naturally didn't dare take Wu Di's punch head-on. His right hand slammed into thin air, and he retreated several steps. The fierce wind from his fist shattered the stone pillars in the hall. When the other elders sensed this aura, they couldn't help but freeze. A human immortal. They hadn't expected that in just half a month, the incomparably dazzling Qilin son of the grand competition would already be at the human immortal level. The Axe Gang youth didn't dare take Wu Di's punch head-on. He wanted to attack again, but the older man called out to him. Forget it. Let me do it. With that, the older man swatted Wu Di with his palm. His attack seemed simple and unadorned, but in the face of it, Wu Di felt a tremendous pressure. He gnashed his teeth and punched viciously, only to hear a crisp crack. His arm broke. Kneel! With a furious roar, Wu Di felt as if heaven and earth were crushing down on him. No matter how he resisted, he knelt to the ground. Once he'd subdued Wu Di, the old man smiled calmly. Wu Di's chest heaved up and down, his eyes brimming with rage. You're Yi Zichen's apprentice, Wu Di? I'm Feng Taihua, the Axe Gang's outer sect administrator in the profound Great District. I'm an early-stage Earth immortal. Let me ask you this, where is your master right now? How strong is he? Was he the one who destroyed Raging Flame City's Axe Gang? A long moment passed, but Wu Di didn't respond. Feng Taihua couldn't help but nod and smile. Chapter 1096. Who do you think you are? Wu Di, just tell us everything. At the end of the day, your master is an outsider. Your surname is Wu, and the blood of the Wu family flows through your veins. Wu Di, for the sake of our family, just do as he says. The highest elder tried his best to persuade them. They really couldn't afford to offend the Axe Gang. They were experts at the Earth Immortal realm. They could destroy the Wu family with a flip of their hand. The other elders chimed in as well. In Wu Di's ears, their chatter was like the buzzing of flies, irritating and irritating. All of you, shut your mouths. Wu Di used the pressure of a human immortal to shout at the elders, who'd been buzzing around like flies. Only then did he look disdainfully at the Grand Elder and the elders around him. You're not going anywhere, he sneered. Who do you think you are? And you, Wu Honghua? Wu Honghua was the first elder's real name. When he heard Wu Di call him by his honorific name, the first elder's expression changed drastically. You say my master is an outsider? You say the blood of the Wu family flows through my veins? You want me to obey them for the sake of the family? Pa. Wu Honghua, let me tell you, if you want me to sacrifice the master who gave me a second life for the sake of the family, you're delusional. The Earth Immortal expert Feng Taihua looked on coldly. Wu Di smiled sinisterly. Don't worry. Don't talk to me about kinship and righteousness. The survival of the family. In my eyes, your Wu family is nothing more than dog fart. Now you're talking to me about the survival of the family? The blood of the Wu family flows through my veins. Then why didn't you say that when I told you to kick me out of the Wu family's ancestral land? When my mother was about to die, I knelt in front of your Wu family for a whole month to beg for a single pill. In the end, my mother fell ill and died, but you didn't even look me in the eye. Now you say my master is an outsider, but he saved me from the brink of death. He's the one who gave me everything I have today. Family, what a joke. Speaking of which, you were the ones who separated Wu Wenguang and my mother, weren't you? You were the ones who arranged Wu Wenguang and Li Na's engagement, weren't you? Because you think my mother is a servant girl and has a lowly status. Li Na is the daughter of the Li family. If she marries Wu Wenguang, the Wu family's influence will increase. To put it bluntly, you old fellows only have immediate benefits in your eyes. Wu Di's words were sharp and he laughed idiotically. He angrily pointed at everyone in the hall, and all the pores on his body seemed to open up in his rage. My long-cherished wish has been fulfilled. I have no other request. If there really is— Wu Di's voice suddenly turned gloomy, but after a few bitter laughs, he shook his head and smiled. No, I have no regrets. These past few months I've been living a carefree life. Even though the time was short and felt like a dream, it was enough for me. Are you very worried? Are you very afraid? Right now, your lives are in my hands, but I will not give you this hope. Wu Di instantly took out a jade slip and sent Yi Zichen a frantic signal of danger, then his body began to swell. Trying to self-destruct? Humph, Feng Taihua had been watching him this entire time precisely to prevent him from self-destructing. Yi Zichen's hand pressed down viciously. His spiritual power transformed into countless threads that sealed Wu Di's spiritual sea. Wu Di's eyes filled with despair after his self-destruction failed. Feng Taihua snatched the jade slip from his hands. Should I send a message to Yi Zichen? He pressed his lips into a smile, then wrote a message of his own and sent it. If you want to save your disciple, come to the Axe Gang. Feng Taihua tossed the jade slip to the ground and crushed it under his feet, then turned to the younger man beside him. Take him back. With his spiritual sea sealed, Wu Di was just an ordinary person. Even if he fought back, he was no match for a human immortal expert. Yi Zichen's hand landed on his neck and he fainted. Your Excellency! At that moment, the first Supreme Elder took a few steps forward. Didn't you say you wouldn't harm our clan's Qilin son? We and the Kai family. Shut up. If you mention the Kai family again, I'll wipe out your entire Wu family. Feng Taihua glared at him coldly, then snorted. I naturally won't kill your Qilin son. So long as Yi Zichen comes to our Axe Gang, we'll naturally release your Qilin son. If you want to trade for your Qilin son, use Yi Zichen instead. At practically the same time, Raging Flame City's upheaval suffered a fatal blow. In less than 3 days, the newly formed upheaval was completely destroyed. The gang leader and vice leader had been captured, and the gang's human immortal experts had fled with heavy injuries. All of the gang's resources had been plundered, and the remaining gang members had scattered like monkeys when a tree fell. However, to the Axe Gang's embarrassment, both Upheaval and Wu Di were stubborn and refused to mention a single word about Yi Zichen. Why do I always feel like I'm the one getting hurt? Yi Zichen scowled as he wandered through the boundless desert. He had no idea how long he'd been walking. All he knew was that he'd pretty much finished half his spatial ring's worth of wine. Yellow sand filled the sky, and there was no end in sight. When the door opened, Yi Zichen sensed it. Without another word, he turned and ran. However, he sensed an invisible pair of hands pulling him through the door. Just like that, he landed in the middle of the desert. How could this door open on its own? I already said I wasn't coming in, and yet they dragged me in? I really. Yi Zichen's fury was indescribable. Furthermore, after entering, he noticed something else. In truth, even if they didn't enter, they could still leave. Otherwise, how had Chi Mei and the others gotten out? Without the third landscape painting, they couldn't have opened the door at all. So how had they been able to travel through the painting's world? Furthermore, they understood this place far too well. So long as Yi Zichen asked a question, they could answer it. I've really boarded a pirate ship. Yi Zichen cursed inwardly. What infuriated him the most was that he couldn't fly in this crappy place. All he could do was walk on the yellow sand, but walking on it was the most tiring of all. No matter what, don't let me out. If I do, I'll definitely teach you a lesson. Getting revenge on Chi Mei might be the only way Yi Zichen could keep his spirits up. He dragged his feet aimlessly, then suddenly saw a whirlpool appear in the desert. A quicksand pit. This was the first quicksand pit he'd found in the desert. Yi Zichen couldn't help but be curious, so he found a safe spot to take a look, but to his surprise. F***CK, you're messing with me. Chapter 1097. The Armory. For safety's sake, Yi Zichen was absolutely certain that he wasn't within the range of the quicksand. But what left him speechless was that when he walked over, the quicksand shifted beneath his feet and dragged him in. With his strength, he could easily break free from an ordinary quicksand pit. However, this quicksand pit seemed to have an extra pair of hands under his feet, pulling him down firmly. For some reason, Yi Zichen didn't feel any more anxious. Back then, the door had opened inexplicably, and it was the door that had dragged him into the yellow sand region. Now, the quicksand wanted to drag him down as well. Then he'd just have to go down. Based on Yi Zichen's judgment, there was definitely something beneath the quicksand, but it wasn't something that could endanger his life. They couldn't have sent me here just to let me die in the quicksand, could they? As the quicksand gradually swallowed up his body, Yi Zichen couldn't help but feel nervous. When his head completely sank into the quicksand pit disappeared, and the desert returned to its original state of tranquility. Thud. Yi Zichen fell heavily to the ground. He rubbed his sore butt and looked around. Just as he'd expected, he hadn't suffocated after being swallowed up by the quicksand. Instead, he'd appeared in the hallway of a palace. Torches lined the sides of the hallway, illuminating the entire corridor. Yi Zichen walked along the corridor, then noticed a secret room on the other side. The armory. When he pushed open the door and entered, Yi Zichen's first reaction was shock. There were immortal-grade weapons, armor, and other battle resources piled up like garbage. Based on a rough estimate, there were at least 100,000 sets of weapons and armor, all of which were engraved with inscriptions that could increase their attack and defense by at least 30%. This was just the outermost room. He pushed open a small door. A dazzling array of treasures hung from tables and walls. The weapons here were a level higher than the immortal artifacts outside. They were all substandard divine artifacts. There were about 1,000 of them. There was another door in the corner of the room. Based on Yi Zichen's judgment, if he could push it open, then the things inside would be divine artifacts. He pushed the metal door, but despite his strength, he couldn't push it open. This further confirmed Yi Zichen's thoughts. The treasures inside were definitely extraordinary. He circulated his celestial spiritual energy to his arm, and with an angry roar, he slowly pushed the metal door open. 10 supreme treasures. There were only 10 tables in the room, and there was a treasure placed on each table. There were ice blades, armor, and even puppets. He looked around and saw that there was no door, which meant that the treasure here was the final 10 absolute treasures. Walking up to the 10 absolute treasures, Lin Fan noticed that there was a description of the treasures on the stone table below. The Mystic Lightningly Fire Sword was a medial-grade divine weapon, ranked 437th on the divine weapon rankings. It was forged from a meteorite and refined with the 9 heavens' mystic lightning and the profound heaven's sacred flame. It had a destructive attribute. The sea-breaking boat was an inferior-grade auxiliary spirit artifact, ranked 217th on the auxiliary artifact ranking. It was forged from the spine of the Netherworld River Bone Dragon. The 100 Dragon Armor was a high-grade defensive divine artifact, ranked 79th on the defensive divine artifact rankings. It was forged from the tendons of 100 adult dragons and had a tough attribute. All of these treasures were divine artifacts, and they were ranked fairly high as well. The 100 Dragon Armor, in particular, had directly entered the top 100 of the defensive divine artifacts rankings. Any divine artifact in the top 1,000 was already extraordinary. Even diviners would fight over a divine artifact in the top 100, and rulers coveted it. Yi Zichen drooled as he stood before the treasures. If he took all of them, as well as the substandard divine artifacts and immortal artifacts outside, how much money would he sell them for? Even if he didn't sell them, he could use these weapons to form 100,000 elite soldiers. Yi Zichen's hand involuntarily reached for the weapons, but halfway there, he slapped his hand hard. Everything that had happened with the immortal medicine was still fresh in his mind. If he'd thrown that stone there, it would have been reduced to dust. If there were treasures here, there was an 80% chance that the situation was similar. Yi Zichen thought it over, then took a few steps back, took out a gourd of alcohol from his spatial ring, and tossed it at the treasures. Bang! Halfway through, the wine jar exploded with a loud rumble. Yi Zichen clenched his teeth and backed out of the room, then tossed it at the substandard divine artifacts and immortal artifacts. All of them were broken halfway through. There was a protective barrier around the weapons, as if they were afraid someone would take them away. I knew it! Yi Zichen slumped to the ground, dejected. He stared at the dazzling array of immortal artifacts, substandard divine artifacts, and the 10 supreme treasures. The way he saw it, this was undoubtedly the 5 Elements' Great Emperor's handiwork. However, when he thought about it, he realized that he really was stingy. He'd already died, yet he'd been imprisoned by these weapons like they were treasures, preventing others from taking them. If he didn't want others to take them, then he shouldn't have taken the entire landscape painting. He even said he'd give people good fortune, blah blah blah. What a load of bullshit. If you won't give them to me, then why did you drag them down? All you can do is stare enviously. You can't take anything, and you even said you'd give you good fortune? Can you stop joking around? This is good fortune. Just coming here and you've been scared witless. You won't even give me a consolation prize. What good fortune? Logically speaking, that door had appeared out of nowhere, that pair of invisible hands that had dragged him here, and that pit of quicksand. This series of actions made Yi Zichen think he was the 5 Elements' Great Emperor's chosen son. Besides, he really was one of Heaven's 2 chosen emperors. Both he and the 5 Elements' Great Emperor had caused the North Star to appear, and he, too, walked the grand Tao of the 5 Elements. Since things were already like this, he should at least give him some face. He didn't even say he'd give them all to him. He wasn't the greedy type. If he could just take half, he'd be happy. He couldn't just come here, be on tenterhooks and go back empty-handed, could he? 5 Elements' Great Emperor, you're really dishonest. I risked the God Emperor's wrath just to come here and take some of your treasures. At least I'll be tainted by your karma. When the time comes, I'll help you get revenge. But you're too stingy. You won't give me anything, and now you want me to get revenge for you. In your dreams. Yi Zichen rolled his eyes repeatedly at the armory. He considered going to the other rooms and looking around. Who knew? He might be able to make some profit. At this moment, the firelight in the armory suddenly dimmed, and a ghostly shadow appeared on the wall of the room. The ghostly figure attached itself to the wall and moved a little. Soon after, a faint smile appeared in the room as a questioning question rang out. Chapter 1098. Just what I want, who is it? The sudden appearance of this ghostly voice made Yi Zichen's heart skip a beat. He stood up and looked around the armory a few times before finally seeing a shadow cast on the wall, illuminated by the lamplight. His heart skipped a beat. After a long while, he swallowed his saliva and pointed at the shadow on the wall. "You were the one talking just now." The flames on the torches in the room swayed a few times, and the shadows on the walls also became distorted by the swaying light. "That's right. It really was the ghost on the wall." Yi Zichen had seen his fair share of ghosts in the modern realm and the lower three realms, but this was his first time seeing a ghost in this form, and in this sort of atmosphere. He couldn't quite figure out the ghost's origins. He gulped again, then a ball of fire appeared in his palm. He took a few steps back. "You're the Five Elements' Great Emperor? You don't need to know who I am." The ghost on the wall flickered a few times, then said, "I heard everything you said just now. I'm here to ask you, what do you want?" Yi Zichen couldn't see its face, nor could he sense its tone. He didn't know what the ghost wanted, but if it really was the Five Elements' Great Emperor's soul, then he hadn't said anything good about the Five Elements' Great Emperor. Perhaps it was here for revenge. My apologies. I didn't think I'd alarm you. In truth, I don't want anything. The treasures here belong to the fated, and I'm afraid I'm not the fated. How could I possibly want the treasures here? How about this? You stay here and rest. I won't disturb your cultivation any longer. I'll be on my way. At a time like this, greed was the worst thing to do. If he really let his greed get the better of him and excitedly said what he wanted, who knew? Perhaps the Five Elements' Great Emperor's ghost would find an opportunity to kill him. He'd rather lose the divine artifact than stay alive. As the saying goes, where there's life, there's hope. So long as he was alive, he could obtain anything he wanted. He laughed drily and tried to leave the armory, but at that moment the door slammed shut. "Boss, I said something wrong before. I apologize to you. No matter what, you are one of heaven's chosen twin emperors, one of the leaders of the god world. You can't be so petty, right?" As he watched the metal door close, Yi Zichen's face contorted into a bitter melon. He had even closed the door. He was definitely looking for trouble. He must have overheard me badmouthing the Five Elements' Great Emperor. If he was dead, then he was dead. Why did he have to leave a wisp of his soul here? Was it to scare the people who came here in the future, or was it to say that he wanted to keep this soul to find a suitable successor? If that really was the case, Yi Zichen could only say that it was too late for regrets. He should have continued to sing praises of the Five Elements' Great Emperor and continued to act like a young man with ambition and ambition. This was great. Not only did he not obtain the inheritance, he even lost his life here. Of course, it wasn't over yet. Yi Zichen couldn't give up so easily. "Senior, when I saw your landscape painting, the fire in my heart burned fiercely. The god emperor pretended to be benevolent and righteous, actually plotting against an upright person like you, Senior. After I saw it, I couldn't calm down for a long time. I believed that avenging you was an urgent matter, and that the god emperor's mask had to be exposed as soon as possible. That's why I endured many hardships to find the other two possessors of the painting. I opened the world within the painting in search of good fortune and revenge for you. Perhaps this junior is too passionate about avenging you, or perhaps this junior is too slow-witted to be able to enter your eyes. It's been a long time since I've received your inheritance, and I'm a bit angry. That's why I said such things. But you must believe that my heart is on your side. I trust that you're a righteous person. Of course, if I've truly angered you, you're welcome to kill me. However, I hope that you'll leave my soul behind, so that it may reside within this mausoleum and serve you." He was retreating in order to advance. These words were absolutely enough to move anyone, especially that last line about leaving his soul to serve him. This was a direct reflection of his respect and fanaticism for the Five Elements' Great Emperor. In the face of such a sincere junior, The Five Elements' great emperor would most likely spare his life, unless he wanted to kill him. Alright, that's exactly what I wanted. Then stay here and keep me company. To everyone's surprise, the ghost in the armory said these words. Even Yi Zichen's expression, which seemed to hold no regard for life or death, stiffened. Senior, you. Afraid he'd misheard, Yi Zichen couldn't help but ask again. Didn't you say you wanted to stay here and keep me company? It just so happens that I've been here for far too long. I'm lonely. Having someone stay behind and keep me company isn't bad. All of a sudden, the ghostly figure emerged from the wall. Yi Zichen could almost see the fangs in its mouth. Senior, I'm not good with words and I'm clumsy. If I stay, I'll definitely make you unhappy. That's fine. If you provoke me, I'll just have to destroy your soul. The ghost seemed determined to kill him. Yi Zichen's palms blazed as he stood in front of him and shouted. Senior, I'm here to avenge you. Senior, just like you, I'm one of heaven's 2 chosen emperors. Senior, I also cultivate the Tao of the 5 elements. Senior, this junior doesn't want to die. The ghost in front of him had a smile on its face, and then it returned to the wall. Why didn't you just say that from the start? Yi Zichen curled up in a corner of the armory. His heart was about to leap out of his chest. When he heard the ghost say that and then return to the wall, he understood that it was just trying to scare him. It seemed acting was useless sometimes. In front of this crafty old fox, his little acting skills were far too exaggerated. Senior, you scared me to death. Yi Zichen clutched his heart and laughed bitterly. He sat powerlessly on the ground and panted heavily. You're scared just like that? How are you going to get revenge? The ghost sighed. Earlier, you said you wanted half of the weapons here? No, I was just joking. Asking for half was pure nonsense. It was already clear that he wasn't one of the 5 elements' great emperor's successors. If he were, the ghost would have seen it all and the seals would have dispersed. Since he wasn't the successor, he still wanted half. Use his head? Even if you really want it, I can't give it to you. However, I can let you choose any weapon you like, but you can only choose one. So that's what the ghost on the wall said. Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. Chapter 1099. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Yi Zichen had been eyeing the divine artifact in the armory for a long time now. Even though he'd only been in the God realm for a short time, he didn't really understand the rankings or special effects. But there was one thing he was clear about: it was worth a lot of money. It didn't matter how much others coveted it, or how powerful its effects were. So long as it was valuable, that was enough. Especially in an unfamiliar environment like the God realm, he couldn't afford to go without a treasure. Yi Zichen looked expectantly at the ghost on the wall. In response to his question, the ghost gently swayed a few times. Of course. Almost as soon as the ghost spoke, Yi Zichen dashed into the secret room. Immortal artifacts? Substandard divine artifacts? Only an idiot would try to take them. Are you sure you want to take the treasures in this room? When Yi Zichen appeared in the secret room of the 10 supreme treasures, Gu Ying followed him. His tone was flat. What, can't I? Yi Zichen arched his brows. Of course not. I said I could let you take one, so that includes everything here, including the 10 supreme treasures. The ghost's reply was completely emotionless. To him, these treasures were no longer as important as before, so he naturally wouldn't restrict Yi Zichen's choices. But before that, I need to remind you that every single treasure here is a treasure that would make anyone on the Divine Mountain go green with envy. You could say that everything here is a hot potato. I can tell you're an immortal king right now, on the verge of becoming a supreme. But have you thought it through? Once you reach the Divine Mountains, diviners and rulers might all fight over your treasures. Are you sure you're strong enough to protect them? The ghost's words hit the nail on the head, and he considered everything from Yi Zichen's point of view. Below the Divine Mountains, Yi Zichen was an immortal king and could do as he pleased. But once he reached the Divine Mountains, Everyone there was a supreme. He might be able to resist a supreme, but what if a diviner or ruler showed up? Does he really have the ability to protect the treasure in his hands? A man's wealth is his own ruin. Everyone understood this, and Yi Zichen was no exception. The ghost's words were like a bucket of cold water poured over his head, extinguishing the fire in his heart. It seemed like he really did not have enough power to protect this treasure. Even if he said that he would sell it and not use it for himself, he still needed a way to sell it. He couldn't be sure that even if he found a suitable way, the other party wouldn't have the thought of killing him and robbing him when they saw him, a mere supreme martial artist. You can only take one treasure here, and once you take it, you can't change it. I suggest that you think about it carefully before making a decision. The ghost on the wall spoke up once more. Yi Zichen, who'd already reached out, retracted his hand from the armor. In comparison, substandard artifacts were more suitable for him. For a paragon to have a substandard deity artifact was already considered to be doing quite well. Although a substandard deity artifact was not ordinary, it wouldn't attract the attention of devas and rulers. At the very least, it could truly become an important treasure for them. His gaze shifted towards the room with the substandard god artifact, before landing on the 10 absolute treasures. In terms of attractiveness, the 10 ultimate treasures were more attractive to him. He stared at the 10 absolute treasures several times. When he realized that he might not be able to guarantee that the god artifacts would remain in his hands forever, the way he looked at these god artifacts changed. First of all, he couldn't take the divine weapons and battle armor. In the god realm, those were the easiest to fight over, and they were also the most commonly used. If he took them out, he'd most likely be delivering them to someone else. Secondly, he couldn't take the divine weapons with functions. Auxiliary divine weapons were rare in the god realm. For example, the sea-breaking boat could fly through the air with divine power, and its top speed was comparable to a peak diviner's. Although it might not be of much use to major powers, it was a rare treasure to the descendants of his clansmen. He couldn't take it either. After eliminating all of these, he could only take one of the 10 ultimate treasures, the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Only the names of the treasures were recorded. There was no description or ranking of the divine weapons. It didn't look particularly flattering either. It was a pitch-black pagoda covered in what looked like rust. He was worried that he wouldn't be able to protect the treasure, but he didn't want to give it up after obtaining it. It would be too late for regret. Yi Zichen steeled his heart and reached for the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Without any resistance, the Yao Ceiling Pagoda appeared in Yi Zichen's hands. The pagoda was so small that its base only covered the center of his palm. He couldn't sense even the slightest fluctuation of divine power from the other divine weapons. It was like scrap metal, inferior to even a substandard divine weapon. This made Yi Zichen wonder why he'd chosen it. Little did he know, the moment he reached for the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, the ghostly figure on the walls trembled violently. After a long while, the ghostly figure spoke again. "You've made your choice. If you're sure you've made your choice, you won't have a chance to change it. Take it and leave." He didn't know why, but even though no one would try to steal it from him, his heart still raced as he held it in his hand. He'd made a crazy decision. He'd chosen one of the 10 ultimate treasures. "Are you saying that I can't change it? Do I have to say something like that?" The ghostly figure seemed to have forgotten what he'd just said. "I can give you one chance to change it. Are you willing to change it? Are you sure?" Yi Zichen was actually a bit hesitant when he heard the ghostly figure's question. This Yao Ceiling Pagoda was far too ordinary, to the point where he really wanted to switch it out, even if it was a substandard divine weapon. But since it was placed alongside one of the 10 ultimate treasures, it naturally had to be special. Besides, he'd already made his choice. It was best if he didn't waver. "I'm not changing it," said Yi Zichen solemnly. He'd already made up his mind. He was no longer wavering. The ghostly figure didn't try to dissuade him. It simply laughed calmly, its laughter almost demonic. Ha! Alright, since you've made your choice, you can leave. Before Yizichin could bow and thank the ghostly figure, he found himself back in the courtyard where he'd chosen the Five Elements gate. Just as he left the armory, the ghostly figure inexplicably probed him. Chapter 1100. Violent rage. By the time Yizichin came to his senses, he'd already left the painting and was standing on an ancient path outside Raging Flame City. When he appeared, the landscape painting that belonged to him also separated from the strange rock and flew back into his hand. I'm out. Yizichin looked around at the familiar surroundings, then at the landscape painting in his hands. His expression was somewhat blank. He'd just taken the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, and the ghosts had chased him out of the painting. He'd assumed he'd just left the armory, but the palace seemed to have medicine and talisman rooms as well. He'd been planning on going to the other two rooms to take a look. Stingy bastard. Yizichin smirked at the stone, but he wasn't so angry. He wouldn't become the mausoleum's successor. Even if he went to the medicine and talisman rooms, he'd probably return empty-handed. He'd been on tenterhooks too. Now that he'd returned to the real world, he felt pretty good. This trip hadn't been in vain. At the very least, he'd obtained one of the 10 greatest treasures, the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, even if he didn't think it was particularly useful. What the hell is this Yao Ceiling Pagoda? Yizichin furrowed his brows and was just about to study it when he sensed a message from the jade slip in his spatial ring. He dipped his consciousness into the spatial ring, took out the slip, and read its content. Yizichin, who'd been standing in front of the boulder, instantly froze. His eyes flashed with a hint of solemnity. In the blink of an eye, he transformed into a beam of light and disappeared from the path. Raging Flame City. In the past 2 weeks, the biggest news in Raging Flame City was Upheaval's destruction. Just like when Upheaval had replaced the Axe Gang, the gang's name became the hottest topic in the city. But now, Upheaval's destruction had once again become the hottest topic in Raging Flame City. The space around him distorted, and Yizichin appeared in the middle of Upheaval. The first thing he saw was a scene of heart-palpitating destruction. The gang's gates had been destroyed, and there were signs of an intense battle everywhere. Even though several days had passed, he could still sense the remnants of the battle. For a long while, Yizichin watched as the gang he'd poured his blood, sweat, and tears into founding Upheaval appeared before his eyes. He clenched his fists tightly, and his entire body trembled violently. Axe Gang. Yizichin squeezed those 3 words out through gritted teeth. He glanced at the rundown gang a few more times, then disappeared from sight. When he reappeared, he was already in the courtyard of the Wu family. Boom. A powerful immortal pressure instantly enveloped the entire Wu clan's residence. In an instant, whether it was the Wu clan's elders, guests, members of the Wu clan, or servants, they all shivered as if they were suffering from malaria. The wind and clouds rolled back and the world changed color. The howling wild winds uprooted the flowers, grasses, and ancient trees on both sides of the courtyard. The bright and clear sky was also covered with ink-colored clouds at this moment. From time to time, endless rumbling sounds could be heard from within the clouds. Yizichin stood in the center of the courtyard and stared coldly at the great hall in front of him. Wu Wenguang, come out and see me. His furious roar was thunderous. Basically all of Flame City could hear the fury in his voice. Quite a few of the city's clans sent people to investigate. Meanwhile, at the top of the city's walls, City Lord WNG lay stared intently at the Wu family in the north. The head of the Lu family stood beside him. Ever since the great clan competition, their 2 families had grown close. In the face of the threat of the Kai family and Wu family's Qilin son, they had no choice but to do so. So strong. After a long silence, WNG Lei's gaze was solemn. Although the immortal pressure hadn't enveloped them, Dandan's angry roar was enough to make even an early-stage sky immortal like him feel his blood churn. If he felt this way, then the person who'd appeared in the Wu family was at least a peak sky immortal, or even an immortal king. The head of the Liu family nodded silently, but he didn't care as much as WNG Lei. As the city lord, he naturally had to ensure the city's safety. With such a powerful expert appearing, even if it was just the Wu family, he'd feel immense pressure on his shoulders. In comparison, the Liu family didn't have to worry so much. Wu Wenguang. Another deep, furious roar reverberated throughout raging Flame City. Yi Zichen stared intently ahead. Before long, the Wu family's first elder rushed out of the main hall in a panic. "Greetings, senior. May I ask how our Wu family has offended you for you to be so furious? Please explain yourself." The white-haired old man stood respectfully in front of someone who was much younger than him and addressed him as a senior. This scene was really interesting to watch. Yi Zichen narrowed his eyes, his lips curling into a smile as he looked at the terrified Wu Honghua. "Who are you?" "I'm looking for Wu Wenguang. Is he too afraid to come out and see me?" Reporting to senior, this junior is the Wu family's first elder, Wu Honghua. Family head Wu Wenguang has gone to the profound Great District's Kai family. These next few days are a joyous occasion for the Wu family and the Kai family. Although Wu Honghua was the family's strongest expert, he was still only a peak human immortal. Otherwise, even an Earth immortal expert from the Axe Gang wouldn't have dared to act so brazenly in his clan's territory. He had no way of determining Yi Zichen's strength. All he could feel was a bone-deep fear. "I almost forgot, your Wu family is engaged to the Kai family." Yi Zichen pursed his lips, his eyes full of amusement. Wu Honghua's scalp went numb. He'd lived for so long, but this was the first time he'd ever felt this way. He carefully lowered his head, his aged eyes flashing with undisguised terror. Right now, he was in the most intense position of Yi Zichen's immortal pressure. The stifling pressure threatened to shatter his Dao heart. "Senior, don't be nervous. I'm not the bloodthirsty type." Yi Zichen smiled and patted Wu Honghua on the shoulder. His warm hands and genial smile didn't seem friendly to Wu Honghua. He nodded fearfully, only to hear, "Wu Di, tell him to come out and see me." Instantly, Wu Honghua's expression froze. He stared at Yi Zichen in terror. Suddenly, an ominous premonition welled up in his heart. "Senior, you are." Chapter 1101. To invite a man into a trap. Haha, you're finally here. The instant Yi Zichen finished speaking, a dozen or so black-robed men and women with hatchets embroidered on their chests appeared in the Wu family's courtyard. Their auras were extremely strong. Even in the face of Yi Zichen's immortal pressure, they didn't fall behind in the slightest. Yi Zichen could even vaguely sense that they were evenly matched. "My lords!" Right at this moment, Wu Honghua, who had an extremely terrified expression on his face, actually moved closer to those people at this moment. His face was accompanied by a flattering smile. "Sir, this is what you wanted. Not bad. There's nothing for you to do here. You can leave now." The middle-aged man standing at the front of the group nodded his head. Wu Honghua felt as if he had been pardoned from a great crime and retreated from their midst without the slightest hesitation. Only after Wu Honghua left did the middle-aged man take a step forward. Boom. The power of a mid-stage sky immortal burst forth from his body and actually managed to suppress Yi Zichen's spiritual pressure by a bit. "Who are you?" Yi Zichen smiled at the middle-aged man. "I'm the Axe Gang's third elder in charge of punishment, Luo Gaoyang." Are you Yi Zichen?" In the eyes of the Axe Gang, everything was already under their control. There were several heavenly immortal experts here and countless earth immortals and human immortals around them. In order to capture Yi Zichen, they'd mobilized more than half of the Axe Gang's elites. Even if the aura Yi Zichen released just now was at the level of a sky immortal, he'd still be hard-pressed to escape their encirclement. "You don't deserve to know who I am," said Yi Zichen coldly. "You have a temper." Luo Gaoyang nodded, then changed the subject. "Then let me ask you, Did you kill Huang Aogu, the branch leader we set up here? Yes. Yi Zichen nodded indifferently. Then I have a question for you as well. My disciple. You guys kidnapped her. Yes, Luo Gaoyang replied. That's for the best. No one understood what Yi Zichen meant. All they could see was that when he said those words, the feeling he gave off had changed. Let's go up. This is my disciple's clan. Every blade of grass and every tree here will belong to my disciple in the future. I don't want him to inherit an abandoned clan. Inherit the family? Don't tell me you think your disciple can come back? Who knows? Yi Zichen didn't say anything. Instead, he floated up into the sky. The sky immortal experts standing in the courtyard frowned as they watched him rise into the sky. One of them, an early sky immortal guest chamberlain, said, Elder Luo, does this kid have a bomb? From start to finish, Yi Zichen had acted far too indifferently, as if he didn't take them seriously at all. This was definitely not an act, but a genuine confidence in his heart. Luo Gaoyang also frowned. He couldn't tell how strong Yi Zichen was. In truth, he'd considered this before. However, they were all elites of the Axe Gang. Not even an entire family clan in the profound Great District would dare oppose them. Where did Yi Zichen get his confidence from? His current behavior was most likely a disguise. It was just that his disguise was so brilliant that no one could see through it. Don't worry about whether or not he has a bomb. We've been lying in ambush in the city for half a month now. Do you think we don't know if he has any accomplices or not? He's already a turtle in a jar. When we capture him, remember to keep him alive. The gang leader said over and over again that he wants to see him alive. Yes, sir. At Luo Gaoyang's command, the Sky Immortals took to the sky and formed a circle around Yi Zichen. Other than them, there were countless Earth Immortals and Human Immortals. The immortal pressure he radiated dyed the sky above Flame City a heavy, ink-black color. Is this the power of a peak-level faction in the profound Great District? WNG Lei looked up at the sky. Every one of them was at least a human immortal expert. He couldn't help but sigh in awe. He was the city lord of Raging Flame City, and he was a sky immortal expert. But he had no way of mobilizing so many sky immortals, earth immortals, and human immortals. Furthermore, his family was currently lacking in manpower. The strongest expert he had was only a peak human immortal. There was no way he could compare to the Axe Gang, which could easily summon so many experts. Everything is clear now. I'm afraid that expert surnamed Yi was the one who wiped out Raging Flame City's Axe Gang. But I have to say, he was too impulsive. No matter how strong he is, Raging Flame City's Axe Gang is backed by the profound Great District's Axe Gang. Now that they've come to cause trouble for him, I'm afraid he's in trouble against so many Sky Immortals. I can't agree with you on that. The Lu family head smiled calmly and shook his head. If he dares provoke the Axe Gang, then he naturally has the strength to deal with them. Who knows? This expert might surprise us. He glanced suspiciously at the Lu family head. The Lu family was the most mysterious existence in Raging Flame City. The people of the city only knew that the Lu family was strong, but no one knew exactly how strong it was. When he heard the Lu family head say this, City Lord WNG Lei instinctively looked up at the sky. Given the circumstances, would he really surprise them? After surrounding Yi Zichen, Luo Gaoyang smiled indifferently. Brat, you can't escape even if you grow wings. I advise you to surrender without a fight. Everyone should be out by now, right? To everyone's surprise, even now, Yi Zichen's expression was as calm as ever. He simply glanced indifferently at the experts surrounding him. His expression didn't change in the slightest. Still pretending? Luo Gaoyang sneered. He had to admit that Yi Zichen's acting wasn't bad, but at a time like this, pretending was a bit overboard. I'll tell you the truth. In truth, you should feel proud of yourself. We waited for you in Raging Flame City for a full half a month, just to lure you into our trap. You're quite bold. You actually dared kill Huang Aogu. Do you know how high his position in our gang is? Is that so? Then I should feel deeply honored. Yi Zichen stopped in midair and smiled calmly. Then his gaze sharpened, and a wave of spiritual energy even stronger than before erupted from his body. At the same time, he pressed his lips into a smile. Chapter 1102. Chapter 1102. Blood City. With that, Yi Zichen transformed into a blur. By the time everyone saw him again, he'd already appeared behind a mid-stage Earth Immortal expert. He grinned, revealing his pearly white teeth, just like an Azura's. A low-grade immortal artifact was like a divine artifact in his hands. It sliced through the Earth Immortal expert's protective aura, causing blood to spray across the sky. This was only the beginning. So long as Yi Zichen disappeared and reappeared, at least one Earth Immortal or a few human immortals would perish. The immortal sword was also unstoppable in his hands. It was unknown how many people's protective aura and defensive armors it had cut through, but the immortal sword was still incomparably sharp and cold. How is this possible? The Sky Immortal experts, led by Luo Gaoyang, couldn't help but be shocked. An immortal king. Yi Zichen was actually an immortal king. What was an immortal king? He was a king among immortals. Even peak Sky Immortals couldn't ignore the attacks of so many human immortals and Earth Immortals. But as an immortal king, Yi Zichen could rely solely on his protective aura to block the attacks of countless Earth Immortals and human immortals, then transform into an Azura and reap their lives. This was an unquestionable massacre. Die. When the roar rang out, the immortals in the sky fell from the sky like wheat being harvested. They didn't even have a chance to resist. They were instantly obliterated. Countless blood-curdling screams and the sounds of battle filled the skies, but the strongest amongst them, the celestial immortals, run. Don't try to resist. Immortal kings were far stronger than sky immortals. The human immortals and Earth Immortals became pawns they abandoned. They disregarded everything else and fled madly. At that moment, Yi Zichen smiled coolly. Wind, come. Several tornadoes appeared in the sky above Raging Flame City. The tornadoes rose from the ground and reached the heavens. In the face of these tornadoes, the fleeing sky immortals tossed out protective talismans as if they were worthless. Lightning, come. Rumble. Several bolts of heavenly lightning struck down from the sky, killing countless heaven immortals and Earth Immortals. Some of the heaven immortals were caught off guard and were killed by the heavenly lightning. As the strongest of these celestial immortals, Luo Gaoyang had to constantly flee in the face of tornadoes and heavenly lightning. He activated his shield of vigor to the maximum, but the heavenly lightning was too dense. Even though he was careful enough, there were still several heavenly lightning that fell on his body. His protective dipper energy shattered, causing him to spit out several mouthfuls of blood. The remaining human and Earth Immortals were scared out of their wits by Yi Zichen's slaughter. In a moment of life and death, everyone was selfish. The Axe gang members, who'd once called each other brothers, all abandoned their comrades and fled in all directions. You want to leave? Yi Zichen had noticed them the moment he entered Raging Flame City. In order to get them to show up, Yi Zichen suppressed his fury and said a lot of nonsense to the Wu family's patriarch. He only had one goal, and that was to catch all the members of the Axe gang in one fell swoop. Catching them all in one fell swoop meant that no one would be left behind. Fire, come! Accompanied by his furious roar, the entire sky turned fiery red. A sea of flames, large enough to envelop all of Raging Flame City, ignited in the heavens. Countless heavenly flames fell from the sky. Flames filled the air. Heavenly lightning roared. Fierce winds howled. Countless human and Earth Immortal corpses fell from the sky. Every single one of them possessed treasures that would make anyone in Raging Flame City go green with envy. However, not a single person dared step out to loot their corpses. They simply didn't dare go out in the face of such a scene. Those who were bold enough to attempt to loot their corpses all died in the process. Buildings collapsed, the earth shattered, the rivers stopped flowing. Immortal King-level energy swept through the entire city. It wasn't just Raging Flame City. Even the small towns outside the city sensed the waves of destructive energy. This was the end of the world. This was the end of Raging Flame City, the 13th district, or perhaps even the entire mortal Great District. Atop the city walls, WNG lay coughed up a mouthful of blood. The instant Yi Zichen summoned the Tao of the Five Elements as the city lord, he'd used his own strength to erect a barrier for the sake of his citizens. He wasn't the only one. The other family clans sent out all their experts as well. At that moment, the hearts of everyone in Raging Flame City twisted into knots. However, as a heavenly immortal realm expert, WNG Lei was naturally the main force that maintained this barrier. When he spat out a mouthful of blood, the barrier that protected the city shattered abruptly. Not good. WNG Lei's eyes were bloodshot. This was no longer a battle between family clans. Right now, he was just a city lord who wanted to protect his citizens. He bit down hard on his tongue, using the pain to stimulate his nerve. He circulated his spiritual energy once more, but at that moment. Barrier. They didn't know where it came from, but all the citizens heard was a soft, low cry. Instantly, a beam of five-colored light appeared in the sky above Raging Flame City, enveloping the entire city. When the head of the Liu family saw the barrier and heard the low cry, he instinctively looked in the direction of the Liu family. Ancestor. Standing atop the city walls was an old man who looked to be over 100 years old. His hair and beard were both white, but his spirit was hale and hearty. He tapped the air with his finger. He could vaguely sense that he was the one who'd set up the barrier. When WNG Lei heard this, he was stunned as well. When he looked at the old man, an immortal king, he stared at the head of the Liu family in shock. He'd never underestimated the Liu family's strength, but he'd never imagined that they had an immortal king backing them. Yi Zichen had no idea he'd caused such panic in Raging Flame City. Right now there was only one thing on his mind: kill them all. In a short hour, all the human and earth immortals had fallen. Even a few sky immortals had perished. Only Luo Gaoyang and a mid-stage sky immortal expert remained. Die. A low voice that sounded like a ghost appeared behind the surviving mid-stage heavenly immortal expert, and when he heard this low voice, his heart almost stopped beating. But before he could react, his head had already been separated from his body. Blood sprayed wildly, but not a single drop stained Yi Zichen's clothes. It's your turn. Yi Zichen tilted his head, then disappeared into the sky. Luo Gaoyang was terrified. He wanted to run. But when Yi Zichen reappeared, as expected, Luo Wanyang was dead. Not a single one of the elites the Axe Gang had deployed to Raging Flame City survived. Chapter 1103. Yi Zichen's broadsword slashed at the Axe Gang. Their elites were annihilated. The cultivators of Raging Flame City, who'd survived thanks to the Liu family patriarch's protection, were shaken. Their eyes widened as they stared at the blood-soaked city. At that moment, Yi Zichen descended from the sky. He held a sword in his right hand, and blood dripped endlessly down the blade. In his left hand, he held a severed head. When the crowd looked over, they saw that it was Luo Gaoyang's head. From the look in his eyes, they could sense what he'd experienced before his death. His eyes were filled with undisguisable astonishment, and his face was filled with undisguisable horror and despair. As he strolled through the city, he left blood-red footprints wherever he passed. At the same time, countless spatial rings and treasures converged on Yi Zichen, forming a river of spiritual treasures. The crowd's eyes burned with greed. It was hard to imagine how much wealth these experts, all of whom were at least at the human immortal level, had accumulated after death. However, they could only watch enviously. None of them dared try to rob them, not even the Liu family patriarch. He simply nodded at Yi Zichen, then disappeared from Raging Flame City. Yi Zichen left countless bloody footprints behind him. When he reached Raging Flame City's teleportation formation, he pointed at one of the guards standing guard. The guard's heart suddenly shrank. He shivered and kept swallowing his saliva. The guard was terrified. He'd personally witnessed Yi Zichen transform into the Grim Reaper and reap the lives of countless human immortals and earth immortals. He was very worried that he'd be the next to die at Yi Zichen's hands. Don't be afraid. I'm not a bloodthirsty person. Yi Zichen spun the immortal artifact in his hand a few times, then stabbed it into the ground. He placed his hand on the guard's shoulder. Do you know which district the profound Great District's Axe Gang is located in? In the 36th district, said the guard, his face pale and drenched in cold sweat. Then take me to the Axe Gang city in the 36th district. Here's my travel fee. He casually pulled a ring from the river of spiritual treasures and handed it to the guard. The ring was stained with fresh blood. The guard shook his head repeatedly, not daring to accept it. Doesn't it cost money? Yi Zichen nodded calmly, but didn't insist. He put the river of spiritual treasures into his mustard seed pouch, then walked towards the heart of the teleportation formation. Thank you. Yi Zichen pulled the immortal sword into his hand. Before long, the blood dripping from the sword and dripping from Luo Gaoyang's head dyed the formation red. Without any hesitation, the guard's hand trembled as he pressed a few buttons near the teleportation portal. The formation flashed with spiritual light, and Yi Zichen's figure distorted, then disappeared. After sending him off, the guard's legs gave way and he directly sat on the ground. His entire body was covered in cold sweat, and there was even a puddle of water between his legs. He stared blankly ahead. At the same time, City Lord WNG Lei and the Liu family also landed at the teleportation portal. WNG Lei felt embarrassed when he saw the guard urinating. This was a soldier that he had personally trained. However, when he thought about how his strength was limited, facing the pressure of a celestial king, it was not unforgivable for him to show such an ugly side. WNG Lei couldn't help but sigh at the guard. Where did that senior go just now? The guard was clearly scared out of his wits. The Liu family head sent a stream of spiritual power into the guard's body, and he recovered some of his wits. However, he still sat on the ground in a daze and muttered, "Where did that senior go?" He went to the 36th district. With that, WNG Lei and the Liu family head couldn't help but look at each other. At that moment, the Liu family's immortal king ancestor landed beside them. Ancestor. Senior. WNG Lei and the Liu family head cupped their fists in unison. The ancestor looked at the formation and couldn't help but sigh. The world is about to change. This ancestor was an absolutely reclusive existence, but Raging Flame City had almost been destroyed. He had no choice but to emerge from seclusion to protect the city. The 72 districts hadn't changed in a very long time. With Yi Zichen's immortal king's strength, he feared he'd stir up the stagnant waters of the 72 districts and turn them upside down. Lu Qing, remember this. If upheaval reestablishes itself, our Liu family will do everything in our power to support it. With that, the ancestor disappeared without a trace. Although his words were directed at the Liu family head, he didn't hide them from WNG Lei. As for how much they could comprehend, that was up to them. Yi Zichen was most likely on the verge of becoming a supreme. Aogu, I'll definitely avenge you. The Axe Gang's leader, Jean Anlin, was dressed in mourning clothes. The Axe Gang members by his side were all in mourning. This was Jean Anlin's request. He wanted to offer his condolences to Huang Aogu. In front of the gang's main hall, quite a few people in mourning clothes were setting up a bonfire. Flames soared into the sky. In front of the bonfire, Wu Di, Wei Jie, and the others had their hands and feet bound. Their spiritual seas were sealed, and they knelt on the ground. This fire had been prepared for them. Jean Anlin wanted them to accompany Huang Aogu in death. Speak. Where is that Yi Zichen? Jean Anlin glared at Wu Di and the others and roared. They were all covered in injuries, especially Wu Di. He was bathed in blood, and his hair was disheveled. Even his breathing was weak. I don't know. Through his disheveled hair, Wu Di smiled coldly and viciously. If you have the guts, kill me. My master will absolutely avenge me. Your Axe Gang and the Green Gang behind you will all accompany me in death. It's worth it. Stubborn? Fine. Then I'll kill you. With that, Jean Anlin roared, Guards! Men, bring him up. They're just the beginning. I absolutely won't let the traitor who killed you get away with it. Jean Anlin glanced coldly at the kneeling Wu Di and the others. Just as he was about to order his subordinates to drag them in, a servant in charge of cleaning the hall stumbled over. Gang leader. Jean Anlin glanced at him indifferently. The servant opened his palm and countless shattered tablets appeared in front of him. What is this? When he saw the shattered tablets, Jean Anlin's pupils constricted. From the broken spirit tablet, he seemed to see a few familiar names. The next moment, he heard the servant gulp and say, This is Elder Luo and the others' tablet. And this is only a small portion. Almost all of the elite members' jade slips are shattered. Before the people around them could react, an Axe Gang member hurriedly knelt in front of Jean Anlin. He had lost an arm, and it was still bleeding profusely. His face was filled with terror as he begged for Jean Anlin's life with a pained expression. Chapter 1104. Actually, I'm an immortal king too. Bang. Yi Zichen kicked the Axe Gang's front door to smithereens. The Axe Gang members standing near the door were sent flying by a wave of spiritual energy. This sudden scene shocked the other members of the gang. Not long later, they saw Yi Zichen slowly walk in with a sword and a human head in hand. It seems they're here to pay their respects. A sinister smile tugged at Yi Zichen's lips. He looked at the Axe Gang setup and couldn't help but mutter to himself. They're quite self-aware. They even know to prepare their own funerals. Impudent! Who are you? How dare you cause trouble in the Axe Gang's territory? At that moment, a middle-aged man appeared in the air. He wore mourning clothes and radiated a majestic aura. From the looks of it, he was at least a mid-stage Earth immortal. He held a long hook in his hand, sharp and gleaming with cold light. Coupled with his sinister eyes, he looked especially frightening. Deacon Chui. The surrounding Axe Gang members all bowed to the man, then looked solemnly at Yi Zichen, who stood by the door. Isn't that Elder Luo's? At that moment, one of the Axe Gang members gulped and pointed at the head in Yi Zichen's hand. The others looked in his direction. It's really. The Axe Gang members cried out in alarm. Deacon Chui furrowed his brows. Without another thought, he swung his hook at Yi Zichen's neck. Die! Deacon Chui roared, raising his aura to its peak. His hook tore through the air, its sharp point aimed directly at Yi Zichen's neck. Yi Zichen stood in front of him and smiled indifferently. His immortal sword flashed with silver light, and he stepped forward. The instant he walked past Deacon Chui, several streaks of sword light appeared around him. He shattered into pieces. The hook clattered to the ground. The other Axe Gang members were stunned, but someone quickly shouted, There's more of us. No matter how strong he is, he can't kill us all. Attack together! Countless Axe Gang members brandished their weapons and unleashed spiritual techniques at Yi Zichen. In response, he merely erected an energy wall formed from spiritual energy and allowed the spiritual techniques and weapons to strike his energy wall. It can't be broken. How is this possible? The members of the first wave were all astonished. Then, they saw Yi Zichen turn around and grin at them. Swish, swish, swish. Sword light flashed, and when he retracted the immortal sword, all of the members had been reduced to pieces of flesh that fell to the ground. 10 steps to kill a man, 1,000 miles unstoppable. Wherever Yi Zichen passed, corpses littered the ground. Blood soaked the Axe Gang's main gate, but from start to finish, he maintained a steady pace as he walked deeper into the Axe Gang. This caught the attention of the other Axe Gang members. When they saw Yi Zichen reap the lives of Axe Gang members like the Grim Reaper, they couldn't help but wonder, who the hell is this person? How dare he barge into the Axe Gang alone? Experts continuously rushed out to stop Yi Zichen, but no matter how many or how strong they were, there was only one result left for them. Die. Splurt. More blood dyed the sky. Yi Zichen chopped off the head of a member who'd tried to sneak up on Yi Zichen. Blood gushed out of his neck like a fountain. However, not a single drop landed on Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen flung his sword. Boom. Yi Zichen slashed through the gang's walls. Behind the walls was where Jean Anlin had mourned Huang Aogu's death. When he stepped into the courtyard, Yi Zichen stopped and tossed the head to the side. The head rolled across the ground, only stopping when it reached Jean Anlin's feet. This is your man. I'll give him back to you. Wu Di, Wei Jie, and the others had their hands and feet bound and their spiritual seas sealed. When they saw Yi Zichen, they were astonished. However, they weren't delighted in the slightest. Rather, they were terrified. Boss, hurry up and leave. Jean Anlin broke through to the Immortal King level a few days ago. Hurry up and leave. The way he saw it, Yi Zichen was roughly a peak sky immortal. That level of strength was enough to sweep through the earth, profound and mortal great districts, but Jean Anlin. He was an immortal king. A few days ago, Jean Anlin would have still been a peak sky immortal. Perhaps Huang Aogu's death had been too great a blow, but he'd used his grief and anger to break through the shackles between sky immortal and immortal king. He'd become an immortal king expert. Wu Di, Wei Jie, and the others had seen this with their own eyes. It was absolutely true. The others reacted the same way. The gang's human immortal experts looked as if they were facing death with equanimity. They urged Yi Zichen to hurry up and leave. They were already deeply moved that Yi Zichen had come, but now Jean Anlin was an immortal king. Gang leader, hurry up and leave. Revenge is a dish best served cold. We'll wait until you're strong enough to avenge us. Don't worry about us. Hurry up and leave. Yu Zhilan's voice was the loudest. Yi Zichen stood in place, listening to their frantic shouts. He couldn't help but smile. Suddenly, his gaze grew cold. 10 years is too late. Some grudges have to be avenged now. Gang leader, Wei Jie and the others shouted frantically. They were already deeply moved that Yi Zichen had come to save them, but the difference between peak sky immortals and immortal kings was like a ravine. Besides, the only reason those human immortal experts had stayed in upheaval was because of Yi Zichen's status as a pill refiner. Yi Zichen was far too young. They didn't believe that someone as accomplished in pill refinement as him could match a god king in terms of spiritual energy. They feared death, and they didn't want to die. But now all they could do was die. They had no choice but to accept it, but they wanted someone to avenge them. They didn't want their only hope of revenge to die here as well. Luo Gaoyang's round head landed at his feet. Jean Anlin's expression didn't change in the slightest. Even if Yi Zichen had killed 70 to 80% of his sex members, he didn't care. After becoming an immortal king, his worldview had changed. All he wanted to do now was avenge Huang Aogu. You're the one who killed Aogu? Jean Anlin's expression was cold as he stared directly at Yi Zichen. That's right, I killed him. That bastard didn't know how to appreciate kindness. He made trouble for me over and over again. I'm already being merciful by not chopping him into mincemeat and feeding him to the dogs. Ha, you talk big. Then you can stay here and accompany Aogu in death. Boom. His immortal king-level immortal pressure burst forth, and the majestic spiritual pressure extinguished the distant fires. Wei Jie and the others were all frantic, but at that moment, Yi Zichen looked at them and smiled calmly.